Chapter 621 Disappearing Straw Hats. Back in time half a day ago, when Luffy just sneaked into the naval base. Shachi's ripping off bar, the remaining members of the Straw Hats looked worriedly in the direction of Area 63 and remained silent. They knew that because it was dangerous there, Luffy didn't take them with him. It makes them miserable, but also more and more eager to be stronger. As early as on Judiciary Island, Sanji talked to the rest of the group. The second and third gears are moves developed by Luffy by squeezing his own physical potential, which are extremely harmful to the body. You can't rely on Luffy to go all out every time, their crew can only be a spectator. However, before they could turn the plan into reality, what happened to the Chambord Islands gave them a blow. Want to get stronger? Late. Hey, Nami, when is Luffy coming back? Chopper hugged Nami with tears in his eyes, looking up at her expectantly. But who can answer this question? Believe in Luffy, Chopper. He's the man who wants to become the Pirate King. Holding Chopper, Nami could only comfort herself like this. Sanji stood by the window, smoking a cigarette in silence. Sudden. Bang. A tall figure fell from the sky and landed on the open space outside the door of Shachi's Ripid-Off bar. The huge figure raised his head slightly, and his eyes met Sanji by the window. Where would you like to go if you were traveling? Enemy attack. Sanji turned around immediately and shouted, Nami, run away. Frankie, Brook, let's go out and buy time. Now that Rayleigh is not here, Shachi also went out to inquire about the news. The Straw Hats who stay here can be described as isolated and helpless, they can only fight to the death. Going outside, looking at this tall body, Sanji frowned and said, be careful. The enemy is a pacifist, a monster who can defeat Zoro. It's so scary, I'm so scared that my heart is beating out. Even though I don't have a heart. In a critical moment, Brook still did not forget to tell his skeleton joke. But at this time, Sanji and Frankie were not even in the mood to complain. Blackfoot, Sanji, Transformer, Frankie, Nose Song, Brook. The figure named their names in turn, then closed the Bible and took off the gloves. That is. Seeing the meatball bulging in the opponent's palm, Sanji suddenly took a deep breath. You are the real King Shichibukai, Bao-kun, Bear. The intelligence of the pacifists is no secret on this island, and the most notable external feature is the muzzle in the center of the palm. But at this moment, the tall figure that appeared in front of them not only had no gun muzzle, but a soft ball of meat instead. Then the answer is obvious, the other party is not a fake at all, but the real King Chiwahai deity. That's right, so, if you were going to travel, where would you like to go? He ignored the hostile bears of the three and slowly repeated the question just now. Devil's Foot. Whoa. Our destination is the New World, ghosts want to travel. With an angry shout, Sanji stepped on the moon step and came to the top of the bear's head in an instant. If you want to travel, go alone. Devil's Foot, Mutton Shot. The billowing flames hit the bear's neck with a powerful kick, and Sanji could even smell the burnt skin of the bear. Did it work? Sanji thought so, and then, a big hand slammed over from left to right, like swatting a fly, and slapped him directly on the ground. Blackfoot, Sanji, let's start with you. Putting the palm of the hand on the neck, the scorched skin healed quickly at an unreasonable speed. The bear flicked his fingers, and a ball of bear paw-shaped translucent yuhi-colored film that represented the injury landed on Sanji. Ah, this feels. A burn. However, before Sanji could respond, the bear disappeared instantly. Before he lost consciousness, Sanji saw Frankie and Brook look behind him with horror on their faces. Boo. With a soft sound, Sanji disappeared. Sanji. There is a secret underground passage in the bar, which was Shachi's refuge when she bought the house. Living in the chaotic place of Chambord, it's normal to have a hideout just in case. But then she and Rayleigh lived here, and with their strengths, the sanctuary was useless. But now this secret passage can be used, and the timid trio hides inside, not even daring to light candles. Suddenly, Chopper's ears moved and asked in a low voice, Usopp, Did you hear anything? Shish, Chopper, Sanji and the others will be fine. They are all strong like monsters. In the past, things might really develop as Usopp said, the halo of destiny shelter, the Straw Hats can always save danger. But today will undoubtedly make an exception, because what they encountered is a monster that is even more monster than a monster, no mistake. No, I heard it too. Nami whispered nervously, it's right above our heads. Huh. Bang. Before he finished speaking, the ceiling of the secret passage was directly grabbed by a big hand. Through the gap behind the palm, you can see that the entire roof of the bar is gone. Slowly, the bear's face moved closer to the hole and continued to ask that nightmare-like question. Where would you like to go if you were traveling? Back in the present, the underground prison at Area 63 Naval Base. Bear, what do you mean? Recognizing that this man was not one of those pacifists who followed the procedure, Lo asked sharply. I'm just here to confirm one thing. If Loya is here, he will find out, with him in more than 100 chapters. Ahem. Compared with the time when I first met the bear a few years ago, the bear now has completely changed. The breath of a living person is less on the body, and it is more like a robot. The most notable feature is that his language ability has begun to degrade, and his voice is as dry and stiff as a robot. What's the matter? There was a strong domineering wrapped around the knife, and Luo Wei felt very bad at the moment. However, Shang didn't answer him, and continued to say to himself, and by the way, the one who sent him on the road. Stop him. Before he finished speaking, the knife and tiger claw attacked the bear at the same time. But he just raised his palm, and that thick layer of meatballs blocked all the powerful attacks of the two. Superman-type meatball fruit. Rebound all attacks, and even bounce off immeasurable things such as injuries and physical strength. Although Lo and Gal's attacks are good, it is undoubtedly difficult to break through the bear's fruit defense. Farewell, Straw Hat Luffy. There was no emotion in his voice, and it was as rigid as a robot, but Luffy still widened his eyes. Because from that sentence, he heard a kind of farewell to death. Boo. No. Seeing Luffy disappearing into place, Lo pointed at the bear angrily. Did the world government instruct you to do this? If the Navy and the world government broke up, the Shichibukai forces would naturally oppose the Navy. But the bear ignored him again and disappeared directly in place. The next moment, his voice came from behind everyone. No, this is my own will. Boo. Sauron, who was seriously injured and in a coma, also disappeared. Up to this moment, a total of 8 members of the Straw Hat Pirates have completely disappeared. Chapter 622 Sentenced to Death. The captain of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates, Fire Fist, Ace, will be executed at the Navy headquarters in a week. This news was like a hurricane that quickly blew across every corner of the world. Countless newspapers simply stopped other reports and kept an eye on this execution. Because everyone knows that Edward Newgate, Whitebeard, regards his crew as his own flesh and blood, and even if it is not for the face of his 4 emperors, he will not allow the Navy to execute Ace. Therefore, what is coming will be the biggest battle since the beginning of the Great Pirate Era. One of the 4 emperors, the Whitebeard Pirates versus the entire Navy headquarters. When the news came out, the elites of the Navy rushed back to the headquarters from the Great Route and from the 4 seas to prepare for this war. Looking at the huge fleet as vast and majestic as mountains and seas, the whole sea was silent. The world conscription at the beginning of the year brought a new wave of peak times to the Navy. Even if it breaks with the world government at this moment, even if there are undead legions eyeing, the Navy is still the same Navy it used to be. No decline. At this moment, Sengoku's purpose has been achieved. Seeing such a powerful army, many pirates died and went into hiding one after another. The backbone that was knocked off by Loya is returning little by little. However, no matter how strong the outside wind was, it did not reach Turtle Island. The undead continue to work and build Turtle Island, and the dragon boat fleet continues to patrol and clear the pirates. For the major forces, this is undoubtedly good news. Whether it is the Navy or the Whitebeard, they are afraid that Loya will be the behind Oriole. If the Turtle Island forces do not participate, then the world government will certainly not dare. Taken in Loya's lustful power, no mistake, Carlo will not make trouble in this battle that follows Loya's mind. As long as he doesn't take action, the 5 old stars who were forced to compromise just now because of the failure of the plan will naturally not. The kind of real troubled times sweeping the world will not come yet. At this moment, on December 1st, there are still 2 days before Ace's execution. In the living room, Loya sat on the top of the robe in the robe that Robin hand-selected and sewed stitch by stitch. In the lower position in front of him, 3 guests representing different forces gathered together for the first time ever. Admiral of the Navy Headquarters, Blue Pheasant, Kuzan. Silence the top cadre of the army, Monkey D. Drago. One of the 4 emperors, Yuhi Hare, Shanks. Coupled with the Ice Dragon, Loya as the master, the 4 people in this room have the power to overturn the world. Shanks drank the wine slowly, but his heart had already turned upside down. He knew that Loya had a big plan. On Ian Island, the first time the two met, Loya told him vaguely about his plans. It's just that at that time, in Shanks' eyes, he was just a rising naval rookie, and if he wanted to interfere with the trend of the world, it was estimated that he would never be able to do it in his lifetime. However, in just a few years, the convenience has taken a miraculous path. As the Navy's Aokiji and Drago, they can sit face to face in peace and calm, plus themselves. No one knows how much preparation the man in front of him has done. What he knows is probably just the tip of the iceberg. Suppressing the shock in his heart, Shanks picked up the wine, looked at Aokiji who was sitting beside him, and asked, "The battle between the Navy and the Whitebeard pirates is imminent. Doesn't Admiral Aokiji need to go back to prepare?" Hearing this, Chingzi glanced at him calmly. "Oh, no need." Shanks. At this moment, Shanks is smiling on the surface. No, MMP on the surface, MMP on the inside. There are people here, except that they came here on a temporary basis. These 2 guys are probably secretly in touch with Loya. Since there is nothing to say, let's get straight to the point. After a pause, Shanks put down his glass and said to Loya in a high position, "You really won't go to the battle between the Navy and Whitebeard this time?" Different from the original book, Guy at this moment is mostly because he has obtained the historical text, but the largest army of able-bodied people has also been eliminated by Loya, and is being worried about by various forces, and he has no time to come out to pick up leaks. However, even if the target in the original book is gone, Shanks still wants to avoid the situation where Whitebeard is pinched from front to back as in the original book. As the closest and strongest power leader, he was naturally the target of his lobbying. But, what Shanks didn't know was that among the 4 people present, he was the only one who still held that last trace of innocence. The rest had already been linked together and sentenced Whitebeard to death. Even if he can really change his life to save Ace, and lead the pirate group to escape, what awaits him is the joint settlement from all major forces. Yes, the major forces. Silence. The army has now become one of the real big forces. Maybe in the eyes of outsiders, they are still the rebels who were kicked out by the world government, but in the eyes of the real high-level people, everyone knows how much Dorag has done in the past 6 months. If it weren't for the unstable foundations of the current situation, he would have risen to proclaim the founding of the country long ago. Well, of course, perhaps it would be more appropriate to call it the Alliance. Anti-World Government Coalition. Whitebeard is old, but not stupid. He could see the current situation clearly and knew that he had to die on that battlefield. For your family, for yourself, and even more so in this backwater age of big pirates. Looking at Shanks quietly, after a long time, Loya finally said, "Go back, Shanks. After Whitebeard's death, a turmoil is about to occur. If you really respect him, you know what to do." Quote. I see. Looking at the unsurprising expressions of Aokiji and Drago, Shanks' last trace of innocence was also erased. Putting down the glass, Shanks got up and walked straight towards the door. The words have been explained, the intention has been decided. But before he stepped over the threshold, Loyan's flat, determined voice came. In this world, there will be no second One Piece. Click. Shanks suddenly clenched Griffin at his waist, his knuckles squeezed white. Conqueror's hockey soared into the sky, leaving streaks on the slate beneath his feet and on the walls around him. Such power is not much worse than Loya's Longway. The entire Turtle Island shook, and the cannons turned around and aimed at where Shanks was. However, the three people in the hall were very calm, drinking and eating on their own. Shanks won't do it, that's for sure. Sure enough, that domineering was released as soon as it was released. The clouds were light and the wind was light. If the dark clouds in the sky have not dissipated, I am afraid that everything just now is an illusion. Farewell. Almost biting Kiba to finish saying this, Shanks resolutely stepped forward. The battle of words is meaningless, and the value of truth also varies from person to person. Watching Shanks walk away, Loya said to the other two, and then he laughed. Well, after all, he's a pirate. Pirates always like to gamble, and they think this is called heroism and romance. But I'm different. Although I also like to be happy and grumpy, but I don't like to put it on something or someone that is uncertain. Quote. Aokiji and Drago just listened quietly, without expressing their own opinions. No wonder Loya asked his teacher Aokiji. After this incident, Marshal Sengoku's abdication is inevitable. How sure is the teacher to take that position? The attributes are restrained and the mentality is different, so it is only about 30%. Shinzi buckled his explosive head and hit Heish. But now Mr. Dorag is helping. I dare not say 100%, 80 or 90% are still there, right? In a battle of this level, being able to say 80% to 90% of the winning rate is already a sure thing. Immediately, Loya smiled and said, it seems that our plan can be advanced. It doesn't matter if the plan is ahead of time, but... Drago looked out the window. Shanks' Yuhi-colored dragon ship, Red Foss, was slowly leaving the port outside. Who can stop him? I don't have the time. Leave this to me. Ulysses walked over from the corner and nodded slightly to the three of them. Chapter 623 Eve of War. December 3rd, sunny. Today is destined to be a day to be remembered. In the early morning, the sky was slightly bright, and the densely packed Navy elites came out of their residences and rushed to the square in front of the fortress with weapons. On the road, I met the last group of relatives and friends who were evacuating with the soldiers. They didn't say anything to comfort them, but they could only forcefully turn away. Everyone wants to survive if they can. But the opponent is the Whitebeard pirates. He is the pinnacle figure standing in the sea from before the age of the great pirates, the strongest man in the world, Whitebeard. Don't say things like, go back to your hometown to get married after this battle. As ordinary soldiers, they can't see who lives and who dies. Just obey orders and fight for justice. As the elite soldiers arrived one by one, the huge square, which was enough to accommodate 100,000 people, was instantly crowded. But with such a large number of people, at this moment, not many noisy voices could be heard. Everyone's complexion was like water, like a lamb waiting for the dawn in the dark night. The confused soldiers raised their heads and looked at the old man in a big coat. There was one person who came earlier than everyone else, and has been sitting quietly on the high platform since last night. That person is the Supreme Commander of the Navy Headquarters, the Admiral of the Navy, Sengoku of the Buddha. As if feeling the gazes of the soldiers, Sengoku opened his eyes slightly. Suddenly, a touch of golden light penetrated the clouds and sprinkled on the huge square, setting off the Sengoku on the high platform like a god. Seeing all the expressions of fear, excitement, and anger of the soldiers, Sengoku didn't say anything nonsense, just raised his fists and shouted. Justice wins. Justice shall prevail. The Navy will win. The deafening roar resounded through the heavens and the earth, and the battle was coming. When the early morning sun lit up this world, the highest combat power of the Navy headquarters, the three major admirals of the Navy, followed the two monster lieutenants, Suru and Fujitora Green Bull, and walked to the high platform step by step. But at this moment, it is not them that attract the most attention, but the prisoner they are about to execute today, Portgas Diaz. The man who didn't look tall, and even said that he was a little thin, was the reason that pushed the 100,000 Navy into this battlefield. Looking at him, countless people cast expressions of disgust, wishing to rush directly to smash his body into thousands of pieces. This kind of gaze undoubtedly made Ace, who gave up his father's name, even more inferior, and was pressed to kneel on Xingxingtai like a corpse. "Carp, didn't you come? Well." After scanning the circle of cranes and others, Sengoku sighed and ordered, "The live broadcast starts, arrive at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and execute it immediately." "Yes." With adoring eyes, the soldier trotted to the stage and contacted the Navy stationed in the Chambord Islands. As the most prosperous Chambord Islands on the Great Airline, it is the best choice for naval live broadcasts. "Mr. Jones, the live broadcast has started. The first 40 area will be handed over to you," Lowe said to Jones on the other end of the phone bug, and then hung up. The notice goes on, the live broadcast starts. After getting the news, countless reporters and passers-by who received the news came to the nearest big silver screen, bringing small benches and melon seeds, just to have a glimpse of this grand battle. This year's supernovas are also on the list, hiding in corners that are not easily detected, waiting for the live broadcast to start. A few days ago, all the members of the Straw Hat Pirates were shot flying by the Raccoon Bear. Some people thought they were dead, and some thought they were still alive. To testify to this point of view, is the battle between the Navy and the Bear. It can be seen that the Bear has no ill will towards the Navy, and acts as a passive beating object throughout. There were only a few shots, but also because he didn't want to get hurt, he used Bear's paw to force Gallon low back. Fortunately, Jones of the Undead Army arrived later, and both sides were afraid, so they were forced to stop. But then, the Bear was taken away by the agents of the world government. Judging from their attitude, it seemed that they were very dissatisfied with the Bear. Let me ask, the Straw Hat Pirates just attacked Judicial Island, which made them lose face. If the Bears kill them, why is the world government not satisfied? At 10 o'clock in the morning, the sun is shining. For the first time, the Navy clearly showed its combat power in front of the world. It was different from the parade of warships in groups of 3 or 5 when the troops were summoned. The 100,000 elites of the Navy wearing the cloak of justice were the most shocking existence. No one pirate group has produced such a large number of troops with such a strong combat power. The people watched this scene and felt more at ease. And the pirates, the more they look, the colder their hearts become. There are tigers in front and wolves behind. This is the life situation of today's pirates. Thought that the sea is vast and let her roam, but the reality is not as beautiful as imagined. The Legion of the Undead and the Navy are patrolling crosswise, and the pirates who have survived have long been out of 10. Not to mention, want to become one piece, and Kuhn's veteran forces in the New World for many years, 4 emperors, stand in front of them. Report. Speak. Sengoku sat on the top of the high platform, expressionless. The fleet monitoring the Whitebeard pirates lost contact for an hour. The staff predicts that they have died for justice. Come yet. Sengoku's expression froze, and he asked, what about Turtle Island? Did they send troops to intercept it? As a force blocking the entrance to the New World, if Loya does it, Whitebeard will never be able to take a step beyond the Thunderous Pool. No, but according to the report from the Ice Cream Town's spies, the character suspected to be Ice Dragon, Loya appeared in the town, and his whereabouts are unknown now. What does this guy want to do? Sengoku frowned in thought. The biggest variable in this war is not in the Navy, not in Whitebeard, but in the nearest Loya. His geographical location is really too advantageous. He can attack and retreat and defend, and it is extremely convenient to do whatever he wants. He thought that he would not intervene in this battle after being silent for the past 2 days, but he did not expect to appear in the Ice Cream Town today. What is he trying to do? Sengoku frowned and stood there for a while. Meanwhile, Ice Cream Town. With a mask on their face, Robin and Loya wandered around the town casually. When it comes to the history of this town, it has a dirty relationship with Loya. In addition to the fact that it is based on the ice field made by Loya, most of the Aborigines in the town are the ordinary people who chose to immigrate with fear because of the appearance of Loya. At that time, with the help of the Navy and the world government, they successfully climbed the upside-down mountain. They thought they could live in peace, but soon they found out that as ruthless people, they didn't live well here. In the New World, there is also Loya, a thigh that can be hugged. Living in the waters near Turtle Island does not have to worry about being robbed by pirates. However, in the first half of the sea area, Roha was beyond reach, and the pirate activities were even more rampant. As a result, a group of people gave up the seemingly safe first half and returned to the New World to settle. But they also dared not approach Turtle Island, let alone live around it, so they built their own town on the ice field on the side of Upside Down Mountain. Then, the passing naval caravan even said pirates, quickly pushing the town to a new level. It has only been established for less than a year, but it has a scale that many legendary towns have. Even Loya acquiesced to the existence here, as long as you don't break the rules he set, whoever you are. After all, the local residents of the town have been so miserable that they have starved to death several times without food, and it is not all caused by him. At this moment, the war on the top is about to start, and Loya not only does not care about the movements of the Navy headquarters and Whitebeard, but appears here, so it is no wonder that Sengoku is so surprised. Of course, he didn't come here for ice cream. At least not himself. After all, he was here to pass the time. Chapter 624 On Top of the War, Breakout. Sure enough, as you guessed, those pirates would rather miss this rare big scene and seize the opportunity to enter the New World. Looking at the tyrants coming and going on the street, Robin covered his nose and seemed to dislike the smell of others. Those piercing eyes had an indescribable sarcasm, and the angry rosacea wanted to draw a knife. But when he thought of who was in charge of this place, his heart was instantly colder than eating ice cream, and he walked away with his head down. Those who can live here are not ordinary people. Many pirates who have no hope of going forward wash their hands and don't want to go to prison, so they settle here honestly. The Navy does not dare to violate the rules set by Loya. One eye is closed, as long as you don't leave this town, it doesn't matter who you are. These guys have long been accustomed to this scene, and after taking a look, they continue to bow their heads and go about their own business. So, in addition to the ice cream town named after its rich ice cream, there is also a name here. The town of beginning and ending. The town of Rog in the East China Sea is called the town of the beginning and the end, because, one piece, Roger was born there and finally rested there. The nature of the ice cream town is similar. The pirates who have broken through many obstacles will rectify and set off here, and embark on a new starting point, but more will stop here and become their destination. Luo actually didn't fully tell Luffy the truth. Among the pirates who survived and successfully entered the New World, almost 2/3 of the guys stayed in this small town. When they were used to being intimidating in the first half and thought that they were not afraid of anyone except the Navy and the undead army themselves, the blow of the New World would make them reacquaint themselves. The strength they rely on for a living and are very confident, here, is not even as good as a trash fish of the undead army. And that kind of fish-like existence, there are tens of thousands in the undead army. Mayfly shaking the tree. No, this is a drop of water that wants to swallow the whole sea. Ridiculous. Only the strong in the true sense can continue to walk. Then, I was killed by the 4 emperors and Loya as an example, and I didn't even have a chance to go home and farm. This is the status of pirates. This is the New World today. Never have any luck, without real power, you can't survive in the New World. Listening to Robin's words, Loya shook his head. They are also a bunch of idiots. I was in a hurry to pick up leaks before I showed up at the Navy headquarters. Even if this is a gamble, it is too irrational. Really smart guys don't start now, they're waiting for an opportunity to give themselves a better chance of surviving. The specialty ice cream of the ice cream town is made of ice cream scraped from the ice itself, which contains a small amount of magic power of Loya, so the taste is very unique. Robin became addicted to eating at once, and dragged Loya to visit several famous shops. Of course, Loya was in charge of the checkout, but what he threw to the boss was a black-bottomed gold-rimmed card, the ice dragon logo representing the Turtle Island Force, which almost made the shop owner sit down. Fortunately, he knew what it would be like to sit down in this icy area with no floor covering, and his legs slackened and regained his footing. Walking out of the last store with the boss's respectful greetings, Loya grabbed the ice cream from Robin's hand, bit off more than half of it, and said, "I have told Ulysses to set up an ambush in front of them, and they all can't run. Now, it is estimated that it has already started there, let's hurry over there." After that, before Robin glared at him, Loya pulled her to eject and started. Roar! The violent dragon roar echoed in the empty ice field, and everyone was stunned, looking up at the huge figure. "Wife, come out and see God." On the side of the road, a pirate who was bargaining with the shopkeeper stared blankly at the figure who had gone away, feeling that his back was soaked in cold sweat. "Just now, I was threatening the store owner with a discount next to Ice Dragon, Loya. It's good to be alive." Suddenly, the pirate tore off the luggage that he had been carrying, and asked the shopkeeper with a confused expression, "Boss, is your blacksmith shop still recruiting apprentices?" "It's too dangerous to be a pirate, so let's find a serious job." Naval Headquarters, the battle has begun. Loya, who knew Akatsuki's original work, didn't remind Aokiji of anything. Whitebeard will die, and it is useless to change part of the plot. As a result, the Moby Dick, like the original, sailed all the way from the bottom of the sea after being coated, and didn't suddenly appear until it arrived at the headquarters of the Navy. Attack! Save Ace! Familiar sailboats appeared in Ace's eyes, and familiar figures shouted and fought bravely. The sound of fighting became the only melody at the moment, and it was useless to issue orders. Even Sengoku could only follow the pre-planned order, roughly the direction of the Master's battle. Goo la 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 la. Ace, are you okay? Are you dead? On the Moby Dick's beluga bow, Edward Newgate burst into laughter with a sledgehammer. There were a few nearby navies who wanted to make a sneak attack, but were easily stopped by Marco and others. Ace suddenly narrowed his eyes and shouted, "Dad, run. This is a trap." "What are you talking about, Ace?" Whitebeard took the wine gourd and gulps down. "There is no reason for a father to give up his son. Please bear with me, and I will save you." Edward Newgate. Long time no see. Sengoku watched the figure silently, and nodded at the three generals below. Fujitora and Midori, lead the lieutenant general and block the captains of the Whitebeard pirates. Understood. The two nodded, used their fruit abilities, and joined the battlefield. Ace. Suddenly, a huge figure appeared on the battlefield. He held a machete in his backhand and slashed heavily towards the naval camp. Hundreds of navies were directly blown away by the terrifying force, and some unlucky guys were even chopped into flesh. The machete was raised, leaving only a pool of unidentified orangutan yuhi. The giant army, attack. Make the best use of it, and war is a giant meat grinder. You play the card and I will take the move. Whoever falls first will lose. Little Oz Jr. is huge. Although he is not as good as his ancestor, the Demon Oz, his stature is also extremely terrifying. Just based on his weight, his moves and actions are like a shattering earth. Only members of the giant army can reluctantly put him right. For a time, the entire battlefield was extremely chaotic. The defense lines of the Navy were intertwined with Kiba, the dog of the Whitebeard pirates, and the battle fell into white-hot anxiety. Not only is Sengoku distressed about the loss, but Whitebeard is even more reluctant to see this situation. On the Moby Dick, Whitebeard suddenly clenched his fist and slammed it forward heavily. "Boys, Daddy will open the way for you." Click. It's not a description, this time is really broken. The terrifying vibration was extremely violent, completely tearing the sky and the sea apart. The seawater comparable in size to an island was easily swept away, and the Navy soldiers stood unsteadily and fell into the endless abyss. Faced with such power, the pirates were in high spirits, and the Navy was terrified. Above the distant sky, Robin's beautiful eyes were dull, looking at the huge building complex rising from the ground, and asked, "What is that?" Loya glanced at it and said, "Isn't that the Navy headquarters?" "I know it's the Navy headquarters, but how is that possible? Can humans have such power?" From the perspective of Loya and the others, this sea area of hundreds of square kilometers is like tofu placed on the dining table. It is neatly divided into hundreds of pieces, and each piece is as big as an island. And the piece that protrudes from the middle of the bean-curd pier is an island, the Navy headquarters, and Malanford that are very familiar to the world. Are you calling me not a human being?" Loya glanced at Robin, and then his eyes sank slightly. "Now, do you know why Whitebeard is called the strongest in the world? Because if he wants to destroy the world, it's really not too difficult." Chapter 625 Domineering Yellow Ape. And this is still a Whitebeard who is old enough to hang a bottle and insert a respirator. Kong has a powerful fruit ability, but he does not have the body to support when he was young. Loya didn't say this sentence, because he was not going to let Whitebeard be like the original, holding an old body, being severely injured by his son, and finally dying in a regretful battle. Suddenly, a dazzling golden Buddha light shot up into the sky, traversing the sky and the earth. Want to destroy the naval headquarters? Arrogance. Even among the three generals, this is probably the first time that Sengoku has seen Sengoku attack with all his strength. At the beginning of an ambush in the ice region, Sengoku's role was only to suppress, to prevent Loya from running away before Kyabu's attack was completed, but now, in the face of Whitebeard's attack, he blatantly chose to be tough. Repression Tathagata. The golden phantom covers the sky and the sun, just like the arrival of a true Buddha, the Buddha's light soars into the sky. With a roar from Sengoku, the phantom of the golden Buddha slowly pressed his palm. A golden light with the word, swastika, swirled in the palm of his hand, with boundless coercion, crushing the soldiers and pirates in the square, regardless of whether they were enemy or allies. Only a very small number of strong people can maintain their standing under this Buddha's light. Boom! Bang! The Buddha's palm fell, and the sea divided by the vibration suddenly fell back. The floating island like Malanford let out an overwhelmed cry, and slowly opened a crack that ran through the entire island. But this is enough, the waves of up to 100 meters rush past, and soon, the back is exposed and returned to the calm sea. If it weren't for the broken island and the shipwrecked Mukuro floating on the sea, who would have thought that such a terrible disaster had just happened here? This is the top powerhouse in the world of One Piece, one move, so terrifying. Boo la la la, Sengoku, you're not old yet. Not discouraged by the fact that Sengoku defused his attack, Whitebeard laughed loudly. Now, rush in. Stop them. Drive them back to the bay. The roar of the top generals on both sides broke the silence, the feeling of repression disappeared, and the sound of fighting sounded again. After watching this fight, Robin felt like he was living in a dream. Once upon a time, she has been living in the nightmare of Aokiji, thinking that it is the most powerful force in the world. After that, she met Loya and knew that he was strong, but she never had a clear impression. But at this moment, Sengoku's fight with Whitebeard made her finally understand Loya's power. That terrifying vibration. The kind of Buddha light that suppresses all things. How powerful should Loya be able to fight alone and defeat all the high-ranking navy? It took several minutes for Robin to recover from his shock. Gently stroking the cool scales, Robin finally knew how much Loya sacrificed for this world. What's wrong? It's nothing. Rolling up the hair around his ear, Robin said with a smile, are you going to watch like this? Why don't you go down and get involved? Me, I'm still waiting for someone. Wait, someone. Who? Wait for a son of destiny. Before the words were finished, on the battlefield below, a roar resounded through the world. Robin suddenly lost his calm, and said in a daze, "Monkey D. Luffy." Just like the appearance of the Battle of Judiciary Island that cannot be changed, the end of the world line made Luffy fly to the daughter country, Amazon Lily, just like the original. Still so noisy, Hancock fell in love with him, and finally even said that he came to the Navy headquarters despite the ban of the world government. The Navy and the world government broke apart, and Shichibukai naturally did not appear on this battlefield. With the appearance of Luffy, Boya Hancock's flagship is also discovered. Sengoku frowned and gave a wink. Kizaru instantly understood, and the golden light disappeared in place. Luffy. The figure that is not tall, but at the moment is so stalwart. Stand alone in front of Fujitora and other monsters, you can't be brave. Who? Fragrant feet. 9 Snake Island warriors can use domineering, Hancock is the strongest one. Almost at the moment when the light particles condensed his body, Hancock turned and kicked out. However, her most arrogant attack did not turn the target into petrification as usual. Instead, she was shocked and took a step back, causing her calf to go numb. Among the 3 generals, the weakest physique is Kizaru. Whose kidding is this? Looking at him vigilantly, Hancock said, "Navy, my concubine is not your enemy." What do you mean by this? According to the past, Huang Yuan might even tease her a few times, but today is different from the past, even Huang Yuan is extremely serious. The wrinkled sour plum's face lost the smile of the past, and Kizaru had a cold face, murderous awe. "Get out of here, or die. Arrogant. How dare you speak to your concubine in such a tone?" Hancock was furious and was about to rush up with his neck stuck. Luffy is nothing on this battlefield, she still wanted to see that something was wrong and left with Luffy. However, Kizaru didn't waver at all, just silently condensed the Tiankong Cloud Sword. "So, you 9 Snake Island, do you want to destroy the country?" Murderous look. Undisguised murderousness. That murderous aura condensed to the ultimate is the aura of a butcher with blood on his hands. Hancock never thought that the guy who seemed to be the best among the 3 generals would actually look like this. She has no doubt that as long as she makes a move, Kizaru will never care about the Chiwahai world government or the 9 Snake Island, kill her first and then kill Amazon Lily. This man is not joking, he said do it. Is it worth it to take the whole country for one man? As a woman, Hancock told himself, it was worth it. But as the emperor, Hancock cannot deny that it is not worth it. During the battle between heaven and man, Huang Yuan's voice from Juyu continued, "You still have 3 seconds to consider. 3, 2, wait." Hancock bit Silver Kiba lightly, turned his head to take a closer look at Luffy who had already boarded Malinford, and then gave an order. "Let's go." Soon, the 9 snake pirates withdrew from this sea area, and could only look at the sky from a distance and pray for Luffy on the island. At this time, Kizaru looked up and took a deep breath. When did this guy get here? What does he want to do? No, the marshal must not have noticed that Loya has arrived on the battlefield, I have to inform him to get ready. Taking a decisive decision, Kizaru immediately turned into a golden light and wanted to return to the naval headquarters. But at this time, an ice wall stood in front of him. "General Huang Yuan, you and I have known you for many years, but I didn't know you had such a domineering side." Looking at the figures walking out of the ice wall, Kasaragi sneered and said, "Isn't he this scaring people? Boya Hancock, as Chiwahai, if he really wants to mess up, it will have a great impact on us. Ordinary soldiers, at least, can't resist her fruit ability at all." "Oh, is that so?" Loya's ice clone stepped on the sea surface, froze the sea water, slowly circled around the yellow monkey, and said, "How do I feel? You don't just mean this. Believe me, you are definitely overthinking." Chapter 626, A Figure of Courage. Just when Kizaru was entangled by Loya and couldn't get out, the fighting continued in the Motobu Bay. Every moment, there are more than 2-digit lives withering here. The war is like a grinning demon, stretching out its claws and eating fresh lives into its stomach. Little Oz Jr. fell under the ice age of the green pheasant. He was frozen into an ice sculpture and stayed in the bay port without much blood. This time, he could not make a way for his companions behind him like the original book. Ace was already crying before the meat grinder started, and seeing Luffy being kicked by Fujitora, his emotions were even more broken. Luffy, Daddy, I beg you, let's go. I have the blood of the devil flowing through me, don't kill more people for me. With his forehead on the ground, Ace bit his lip. Soon, the board was wet with tears. Ace, wait for me. Even in the face of Fujitora who released the water, Luffy was already covered with bruises at this moment. Not to mention that he was seriously injured by Gal a week ago, and his internal organs were exposed. Now he is completely supported by a will. That strength is gone, he may never be able to stand up. Go away. When pushing Fujitora back with a punch, Luffy shouted loudly, we are brothers. We drank the wine of righteousness, and we agreed to become the Pirate King. Luffy. Looking at the familiar figure, Ace suddenly realized that he couldn't see through this idiot brother. When he was young, he would only cry after his butt, and was bullied by the little guy who asked him to help him out. Now, he is so brave that he can't see it. At the back of the battlefield, Whitebeard stood there calmly, watching the battle between the two sides. At this moment, he narrowed his eyes slightly and put his eyes on Luffy. Marco, Joes, go and help the kid make way. Yes, Dad. Someone who inherited Roger's legacy. Do you really, can change the world? Looking at Luffy, Whitebeard fell into contemplation. The family town of Malinford has long since been evacuated. But at this moment, a group of people are strolling down the street, moving out of the wine in the tavern from time to time and drinking happily. This group is the Blackbeard Pirates led by Marshal D. Teach. Who would have thought that when the whole world was looking for them, they came to the most dangerous Malinford? After being calculated by Loya, Tiki is in a very difficult situation now. The world government, navy, pirates, bounty hunters and Loya all regard him as a mortal enemy. Not only did he fail to take advantage of the turmoil when Luffy went to advance the city to save people as in the original book, but he was also like a lost dog, hiding and daring to show his face. But it's all about to end. Titch believes that today is the day when his fate turns. Handing him a full bottle of rum, Basa suddenly asked, Captain, did you say, Ice Dragon, Loya would come here? It's been hit so far and it hasn't appeared, is it not coming? Already. PFF'd ha ha ha, don't worry, Bashes, I can't guarantee the others, but that guy. That bastard monster, will never miss today's scene. Tiki bit Kiba and took a sip of wine and said, wait. I'm going to crush 2 myths with my own hands in front of the world. Let them become my stepping stones and help me lead to One Piece. But, can't you only get one more fruit ability? Ice Dragon Fruit and Shock Fruit, which one do you choose? Of course it's the Ice Dragon Fruit, right? Van Oka adjusted his sniper rifle and took over the topic. Whitebeard's Shock Fruit is indeed very powerful, but our most important goal now is to form our own power. Once we grow to the size of Turtle Island today, One Piece is just around the corner. Titch didn't speak. He had been thinking about this question a long time ago, but he didn't have an accurate answer until he boarded Malinford. In all fairness, as a veteran cadre who has been with Whitebeard for 20 years, he clearly knows how powerful Junjangwo's attack is. The dark fruit happens to be a fruit that is not enough to attack and has more than enough defense, and the power of the shocking fruit can just make up for this shortcoming. Even if Loya is let go now, he is sure to defeat him head-on in the future. But then go later. Now that his family knows about his family affairs, his pirate group can't even compare with the Straw Hat Pirates in terms of the number of officers. If you want to convene your subordinates to gradually expand your power by relying on the double fruit ability, when will you go? After such a long time, the ghost knows whether there will be any unpredictable changes in this world. One Loya is enough for him to have a headache. If there is another one, he will have to say 2 things about whether he can still become One Piece. And the ice dragon fruit can save him years of time, and use the army of dead people to completely establish his status as the four emperors. Which is better or worse is a matter of choice. As if he had decided on both, Titch thought as he walked, hesitating. Suddenly, a question came from the front. Who are you? Who allowed you to come here? Wow, there are still guards. Are you prepared for a sneak attack? Titch looked up and smiled coldly. What? After a few screams, the dark curtain spit out two corpses that were compressed beyond recognition. Don't think so much. Even if you want the strength of the two of them, it depends on whether the Navy gives us this opportunity. Titch stepped forward and waved his hand. When two tigers fight, one will be injured, but the injured tigers are tigers, you all be careful. Understood. Fujitora, your opponent is me. Marco transformed into a blue firebird, blocking Luffy's face. He turned his head and said to Luffy, Luffy, right. Leave these enemies to me, and you go save your brother. Thank you. Nodding earnestly, Luffy dragged his exhausted body and continued to run. So, on this unprecedented scale of the top battlefield, a strange scene appeared. In the war that originally belonged to the Navy headquarters and the Whitebeard pirates, the one who charged ahead was a little guy who did not belong to these two forces. Weak, but imposing like a rainbow. Countless pirates willingly used their lives to kill a bloody path for him, and the naval officers and soldiers also gave up their close targets and rushed towards him. The center of the entire battlefield is now condensed on that slender figure. The Chambered Islands, the supernovas who haven't left, have been shocked by Luffy's sudden appearance, so they can only stare at the big screen blankly. Girl with big stomach, Bonnie nibbled at the drumsticks and ate Heisei, and admitted reluctantly, this time, that guy Luo was right, Straw Hat Luffy is definitely our toughest enemy in the future. That kind of aura that sees thousands of troops as nothing and keeps moving forward, even her heart is surging when she sees it, and she can't wait to rush to that battlefield and fight. But this thought was just a thought. Bonnie knew how terrible the Navy was that could stand for hundreds of years. With her current strength, it would only be a matter of minutes to be wiped out. After all, she is not as lucky as Luffy, and let the people from the dignified Four Emperors and the Whitebeard pirates open the way for her. Chapter 627 Betrayal of the Family. A big tree on the street asks for a subscription. You can read it from the starting point of Q. That's it, Straw Hat Luffy. Suddenly, Akainu, Sakazuki, who disappeared on the frontal battlefield for a while, fell from the sky along with rolling lava. When it landed on the square, the dotted magma scalded the ground into black Madara spots. The thick sulfur-flavored smoke billowed up, like a Balrog from hell, blocking Luffy's face. At this moment, Akainu's complexion was extremely gloomy, exuding a strong murderous aura. I was just a little distracted to do something, but I didn't expect the pirates to rush under the execution platform. He looked up and saw that Fujitora was fighting with Diamond, Yoja, the captain of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates, while Green Bull was being entangled by Phoenix, Marco. These two may not be their opponents fighting alone, but they can't get away in a short time. And farther away, the Green Pheasant is cooperating with the soldiers to single out the Whitebeard. Very dangerous. But relying on the frozen fruit, he trapped a large number of members of the Whitebeard pirates under the ice, so that Whitebeard did not dare to use too strong vibration, and there was no good way to take him for a while. Almost all members have their own opponents, but after careful calculation, Akainu found out that the 3 generals of the same Japanese ape have disappeared. Where did he go at such an important moment? This bastard. This made Akainu's anger out, so even if he was just a rookie pirate in front of him, he was going all out at the moment. Dog bites Yuhi Lotus. The rolling lava wrapped around the arm and enlarged the fist in a circle. Danger. Luffy's temples were beating rapidly. He knew very well that as long as he was hit by the opponent, he would die on the spot. Fishman Karate 5000 Tile Junction. The invisible fluctuation suddenly hit the lava iron fist. The two sides collided violently, and then immediately exploded into a scorching flower. Taking this opportunity, Luffy dragged his body and rolled to the side with all his strength. The scattered lava splashed on the square, and the hot air made the fat figure involuntarily take a half step back, but fortunately, the lava no longer threatened Luffy in the distance. You are. Luffy can be sure that he does not know the Murloc in front of him. And there is no sign of the Whitebeard pirates on the other side, proving that the other side is not from Whitebeard's side. Go ahead, Luffy. After repositioning the Murloc karate start, Jinbei stared at Akainu in front of him. This old man will buy you time. Oh, thanks. No matter who the opponent is, the most important thing now is to save Ace. Luffy got up from the ground and ran in a circle. Jinbei, is this the intention of the world government or your own will? Akainu had a dark face, his chest heaving. Just came a Snake Heim, the king of the seven Wuhai, and now there is a seaman. Is the world government like their navy to bully? Akainu has only one purpose now, to kill Whitebeard. Kill Ace. Anyone who stands in his way is an enemy. This is the will of the old man himself, General Akainu. Looking at Akainu near the edge of the outbreak, Jinbei took a deep breath. It has nothing to do with the world government. Very good. Then you will die here. As soon as he finished speaking, Akainu suddenly burst out. He leaned forward and swung his arms into a lava fist surrounded by rolling lava. Ghost dog. The flaming magma of the orangutan Yuhi turned into a vicious dog, and rushed towards Jinbei fiercely. Can't escape. Jinbei made a judgment in an instant. If it is in the sea, Jinbei has some means to block this move. But in order to help Luffy, he took the initiative to leave the bay and come to land. At this moment, in the face of Akainu's merciless killing move, he can only choose to resist. Huh. Taking a deep breath, Jinping put his palm flat in front of him, and the water flow condensed in the palm, and soon formed a fist-sized water ball. Fishman Karate Esoteric Wu Leiguan. Bang! The water polo erupted immediately, and with a powerful impact, it slammed into the lava dog. As one of the most powerful mysteries of Murloc karate, even the dead dog cannot be easily taken down. In the air, water waves and magma are entangled together, fighting each other, consuming each other's strength. Suddenly, a dazzling white light spreads from it, and a dangerous aura suddenly rises. No, it's going to explode. Fire and water are incompatible, not to mention lava. After being unable to break through the defense of the water waves, under the restraint effect of the attributes, the lava dog suddenly exploded. Rumbling. Groups of hot magma and steam shot in all directions, and a few unlucky guys got a little closer, and they fell to the ground almost instantly and wailed. Their skin was unusually white, like scalded pork. Jinbei was not feeling well, and he was burned in many places on his body. But the Murloc's physical fitness is far superior to that of humans, not to mention that he is also regarded as the top among the Murlocs, and after biting Kiba, he stood firm. However, there was one other person who was not affected much at all. Double Hell Dog. Akainu is not afraid of high temperature. Bypassing the hot fog, one left and one right, two lava dogs moved towards Jinping. The power of this attack path is naturally incomparable to the previous one, but the threat from the magma is not diminished in the slightest. Can't resist. Jinbei instantly made a judgment and wanted to dodge sideways. But he is fast, and there is someone faster than him. Whoa! The hot water mist in the air was suddenly separated by someone, holding an iron fist. The figure of Akainu came to Jinping. Where are you going, Jinping? Crap. Click. Akainu's fan-sized palm was stuck on Jinbei's neck, and his feet were like iron nails, holding him firmly in place. Then, the Shuangming dog came first and then, biting Jinping's waist one by one. Ah! The disgusting smell of burnt meat suddenly wafted out of the air, and even if Jinbei was extremely strong-willed, he was killed by that terrifying attack. What's even more desperate is that Akainu is stuck in his neck, so that he can't even struggle for a moment, and he can only helplessly endure the piercing pain. Humph! Disgusting fishy smell. Akainu snorted coldly without changing his face. His arm was covered with magma again, and under close contact, Jinpei's scream became even more harsh. But at this moment, boom, dwang, an unknown object smashed on Akainu, and while he vomited blood, he had to let go of his arm and flew out with the object. Bastard Aokiji, what are you doing? The one who flew over was naturally Aokiji. Seeing the blood dripping and roaring from the corner of Akainu's mouth, he twitched the corner of his mouth and pointed to the distance and said, he must be doing it on purpose if he wants to find trouble with Whitebeard. Nani? Akainu looked up, and sure enough, Whitebeard still kept his attacking posture and raised his fist. But in the center of his chest, a long big sword pierced through his body, the blood slid down the blade, dripped on the ground, and splashed dazzling blood flowers. Seeing this, a smile appeared on Akainu's face, and he said in surprise, as expected by the marshal, the big vortex spider really betrayed him. Cough cough, I just said that he had the courage to stand in our way. It was the marshal's idea. Qingzi clutched his chest and stood up tremblingly. Whitebeard's angry punch was not a good one, because he wasn't killed because he was old. Looking at the Whitebeard who was stagnant over there, Aokiji sighed, unfortunately. Old, Dad. With the only eye that could still see, Jinping, who fell to the ground, looked at the Moby Dick, froze in place, and then he cried out, Father. Chapter 628 Son of Roger. Tick, tick. The blood slid down the long knife and dripped onto the deck, quickly forming a pool of water. The entire battlefield was quiet amid Jinbei's roar. The Navy and the pirates looked at Whitebeard at the same time, blankly looking at the long knife on his chest. Whitebeard, hurt. Or this fatal injury. Suddenly, the soldiers of the naval camp increased their breathing, and a scorching flame burned in their hearts. Whitebeard is injured, then victory will belong to them. Kill all the pirates. Soon, the battlefield fell into a hustle and bustle again. But at this moment, the Whitebeard pirates no longer had the momentum they had just now, and they were defeated by the Navy counterattack. Squard, what are you doing? Carrying the attack of the Green Bull and flying back to the Moby Dick, Marco punched the big vortex spider, Squard, in the face. Seeing the fear and pleasure in his eyes as he fell, Marco bit Kiba and turned to examine Whitebeard's injuries. How is it, Dad? It's okay, I'll call the doctor right now. Baga, it's just a minor injury. He raised his hand to stop Marco's movements, and Whitebeard slammed Naginata on the deck, propping himself up and standing up. Slowly bowing his head, Whitebeard asked painfully, Squard, why? For what else? He is afraid of death. So he betrayed us. Marco's body rekindled a blue flame and looked at Squard viciously. But at this time, Squard roared like a victim. You betrayed us, Whitebeard. Fear, pain, hatred, pleasure, all kinds of emotions condensed together, making Squard look like a ghost. You think I don't know your deal with the Navy? Take our lives for a chance to live. What are you talking about? How could Daddy do that? Marco went mad, but under the obstruction of Whitebeard, he could only stare at Squard angrily. You don't believe it? Squard glanced at Marco and continued to question Whitebeard. Then tell everyone in front of everyone, whose son is Ace. Nani? For a time, all eyes were on Whitebeard. Whose son is Ace? Is there any secret in this? Originally, the other teams, including Marco, thought that Whitebeard was the fourth emperor and Ace was their family, so they launched this top war against the Navy. But now it seems that the truth is not so simple. In the Chambord Islands, countless people watching the live broadcast held their breath at this moment. Their eyes did not blink, even Gal and Lo were no exception. Those supernovas frowned and looked at the big silver screen seriously. The reporter of the newspaper swallowed nervously, and the pen he was holding was trembling. When morale is low and the military is unstable, if Whitebeard can't do something to restore the situation, then defeat will be doomed from now on. And once he does something, it will definitely be an earth-shattering event. After listening to Squard's words, Whitebeard instantly understood. But instead of looking at Sengoku who made this plan, he looked at Squard kindly. Then, in front of everyone's eyes, he raised his big fan-like hand. Huh. Immediately afterwards, he hugged Squard in his arms. What a Baga's son. When Whitebeard raised his hand, Scourge thought his death was coming, but when he heard this, he was stunned on the spot. How can I give up my cherished family? Even if I die, I will never do that. It's wrong for me to keep hiding from you, so I am sorry, Dad. At this time, even if he didn't know the specific reason, Scourge didn't know that he was fooled. Tears and nostrils flowed uncontrollably, and I cried bitterly. Dad, why? I'm sorry for you. Kill me. What a joke. Whitebeard said in a relaxed tone. Even if you do something wrong, you are still my son. When he released his hand, Whitebeard straightened his waist like a pine and cypress that could not fall. Looking at Sengoku on Xingxingtai, Whitebeard took a deep breath, and his loud voice echoed throughout the Navy headquarters, as well as in everyone's ears. Ace is Roger's own flesh and blood. If you want to save him, follow me. Is Ace Roger's flesh and blood? Roger. One Piece. Whoa. One stone stirred up 1,000 waves, probably such a situation. Whitebeard's words spread to the Chambord archipelago along with the live broadcast, and immediately, the entire Chambord archipelago was detonated. Fire Fist, Ace, the son of One Piece, Roger. The blood of sin that has disappeared for 20 years still remains in the world. The supernovas were all stunned one by one, no longer as indifferent as before. Even if a dangerous new world awaits them, they can handle it with equanimity. But in front of this news, no one can calm down. Hurry up. Urgent supplement. One Piece, Roger's son is Fire Fist, Ace. The news was spoken by Whitebeard. Urgent contact. Stop all editing and make this a headline. The reporters were the first to come back to their senses. Their good professionalism made them tremble and quickly pick up their pens. In just a few minutes, hundreds of news birds rose to the sky in the Chambord archipelago, sending this news to the world. Naval Headquarters, go to Xingtai. Crane glanced at Sengoku beside him and asked, is it really good to not turn off the live broadcast? When Squard succeeded, Crane had foreseen this scene. She believes that Sengoku, who is also a IQ penultimate, must have guessed this. However, he did nothing and let it spread across the sea. Crane couldn't figure out what was the point of Sengoku doing this. However, Sengoku guessed what she wanted to ask, and without waiting for her to speak, he answered directly. Compared to the Fire Fist, Ace of the Four Emperors, Cadres, the son of One Piece, was executed by the Navy, so that we can truly stand up. Even if it costs more. Crane didn't ask this question, because she knew that Sengoku's mentality had changed since he was defeated by Loya last year. Zephyr retired for a long time, Carp did not return for a long time, and the rest of his colleagues died of casualties in the past 20 years. The former companions, and now only she and Sengoku are still fighting for justice. It's just that today, Sengoku also has a last madness. After a pause, Sengoku shouted loudly, Whitebeard has acted. Kill him. Yes. After the real identity of Ace was announced, whether it was the Whitebeard pirates or the Navy, there was an extra reason to fight at this moment. Fire Fist, Ace and Whitebeard, Edward Newgate combined, their influence is not as big as that of One Piece's bloodline. Thinking that the bloodline of One Piece will be cut off in their generation, the morale of the Navy is high, and they madly pounce on the Whitebeard pirates. Chapter 629 Block the way back. Little ones, follow Daddy. Save Ace. Looking at the back of Whitebeard leading the pirates forward, Marco sighed secretly. How old is Dad? In the past, no matter what kind of sneak attack he encountered, he could easily dodge it. In the ups and downs of these years, are there still fewer enemies who came to assassinate them pretending to be them? But now, he couldn't even avoid Scourd's sneak attack, so he could only choose to resist silently. That old body has shielded their children from too much wind and rain, making them think that their father will always be the strongest. So much so that when they didn't notice at all, Whitebeard really didn't work. However, even so, Whitebeard still dragged his exhausted body and continued on his journey. For the family. Glancing at Squart again, Marco said calmly, don't sit like a waste. Even if Ace's father is your enemy, Ace is also our brother and father's son. After all, Marco flapped his wings and quickly followed. Biting Kiba hard, Squart wiped away his tears and picked up the long knife stained with his father's blood. The big vortex spider pirates. Follow me. That old toad in Sengoku is still as sinister as ever. Loya shook his head, looking at the familiar and unfamiliar top war below, and shook his head. When are you going to see it? It's only a matter of time before Whitebeard is beaten to death. I have to say, Robin's eyes are still very vicious. After Whitebeard was attacked by Squart, she had come to the conclusion that the opponent's body was dying. Even if he showed the power of tearing apart the world in that scene, he could not be an opponent of a navy like the Division of Tigers and Wolves. Loya said before that he wanted a fair fight with Whitebeard. But how do you look at it now? He just wants to pick up the leak easily, right? Don't worry. Look, Kizaru is back. Robin looked down, and sure enough, Kizaru finally rushed out from under the siege of Loya's clone, no mistake. Although these clones are not his opponents, but there is a real monster watching over his head. So Kizaru had to wait honestly for Loya to let go, and then go back with the things. As he moved, Kizaru muttered softly. Why do you want me to do such a troublesome thing? In case Yuan Shuai loses his head, won't I be beaten to death? Don't worry, he won't kill you. The sudden sound startled him, and then Kizaru silently took out a small phone bug from his arms and said, Hello, I promised to help, but you are still monitoring me. General Huang Yuan, we are both old friends, do you need me to clarify your personality? Luoya took the phone bug and sneered. You are famous for giving up halfway, and if there is something wrong in the limelight, just leave. No, watching, I can't rest assured. Kizaru, Sigma Hollow Square. It was actually seen through, what a failure. Sure enough, the Navy's worst decision was to bring this Roja of unknown origin into the team. Yes, I'll give it my all, anyway, the final result is no different. It's not a good thing to be targeted by a guy like you. While muttering, Kizaru accelerated. On the battlefield, with the addition of Whitebeard, the Navy team was losing ground. Seemingly good for the Whitebeard pirates, Sengoku had a winning smile on his face. When the figure of Whitebeard appeared in the square, he gave an order. Close the door. Let the dog go. Of course, this sentence was made up by Loya. Sengoku's original words were actually, block the bay. Divide the battlefield. Yes. Even Loya's Turtle Island attaches so much importance to defense facilities and spends a lot of money to build forts. How can the naval headquarters, which has been standing in the sea for hundreds of years, have no backers? As the order was issued, the soldiers who were still fighting on the Gulf icefield abandoned the enemies in front of them and retreated towards the secret passage in batches. When the pirates thought that the enemy had been slaughtered and escaped from the state of dog blood, they realized that something was wrong. The wall rises. Without going to make up for Jinping, Akainu has more important tasks. He gave the order loudly, and stomped on the edge of the bay. Hum. Clack clack. The sound of the iron chain sliding came from the ground, as if there was an earthquake. Some fragile ice layers quickly disintegrated under the shock, revealing the trembling and jumping seawater below. Then, around the bay port, a thick wall rose from the sea, like a cage, dividing the bay port from the square. Not good. They're going to block our way out. Marco quickly came to his senses, turned around and flew towards the bay port. However, at this time, the highest combat power of the Navy gathered together, and an ice bomb forced him to stop moving. The phoenix fruit of the phantom species makes Marco not afraid of being injured, but once it is frozen, his fruit ability will have no good way. It's over to you, Akainu. Humph. In the distance, Akainu snorted coldly, his fist was wrapped in thick magma, and he suddenly hit the sky. Meteor volcano. Shish. Like fireworks, the lava fists quickly flew high into the sky, crossed the high wall rising from the bay port, and turned into meteors in the blink of an eye. Shouldn't it be missed? Some pirates thought of it with such a fluke. But soon, Akainu told them with practical actions, young people, too naive. Hidden, falling. I saw the sky was full of red yuhi, and the vanishing lava carried terrifying kinetic energy and fell from the sky densely. What a fiery meteor shower. Fire. What's worse, while the pirates were busy avoiding the meteor shower, the turrets erected on the left and right of the wall were turned around and aimed at them. The ice layer under their feet. Bang. Cannonballs explode. Bang. Magma crash. This is an unequal massacre. It's like an elite squad fully armed with M16 automatic rifles facing an ape-man from ancient times. The ice layer on which they rested was smashed by artillery and magma, and the pirates who fell into the sea and lost their footing could not escape, were burned to death by magma, and killed by cannonballs. The screams and explosions took over the battlefield, and even the naval soldiers who were the enemy in the square clenched their weapons numbly. But at the same time, fear stirs their faith. This is the power of the Navy, this is the power of justice. Justice shall prevail. The soldiers roared and rushed towards the remaining members of the Whitebeard pirates. The screams made Whitebeard tremble. Those who died were his family. Like an angry lion, Whitebeard mustered the few physical strengths on his body and punched it out. Sengoku, I want you to die. Boo. The crisp sound of shattering echoed in everyone's ears, and the completely angry Whitebeard made the world fall apart once again. Chapter 630 Inches Despicable, Sengoku. Stop him. He's going to drag the Navy headquarters to be buried with him. This time, Whitebeard no longer scatters his strength to focus on other places, and the dangerous vibrations point directly to the source, condensing together. Boom. Click. Obviously still far away, a crack suddenly appeared in the magnificent fortress of the Navy headquarters, which had not been rebuilt for a long time. This crack is so huge that it runs through the entire fortress, tearing the word, justice, in front of it. Sengoku's heart was alarming. He understood that Whitebeard was going to pull him back, and even if he died, he would avenge his family. However, because the attack was too concentrated, Sengoku noticed a little. He's avoiding Ace's position. Sengoku is now standing on the execution platform. Since Whitebeard wants to kill him, it must be spread to the execution platform. However, Ace, his son, was also on the execution block, and Whitebeard never wanted Ace to die at his own hands. So he condensed the shock into a line, and the target was only Sengoku. That is to say. Suddenly, Sengoku bent over to look around, grabbed Ace who was holding the sea tower stone in his hand, and blocked him in front of him. Despicable. Whitebeard was furious, but he could only give up the attack decisively. Boom. The invisible air shock was thrown out by his backhand, bypassing Sengoku's position. Strong vibrations drifted over their heads, and even if they were as strong as Sengoku, they inevitably groaned and the corners of their mouths bleed. The ace in his hand was even more unbearable. The days of torture had already made him extremely weak, and at this moment he vomited blood and fell into a coma. But it turned out that the two of them were still alive, and with the execution platform as the center, the left half of Malenford was instantly torn apart by this terrible shock. Literally ripped. This island, which has stood for hundreds of years, represents the highest glory of the Navy and is named in the name of justice, was struck in anger by Whitebeard and divided into two. The broken edge is an endless abyss that can't be seen at a glance, because even the sea, which is not known how many meters deep, has broken a big hole under this blow. The power of one person, destroy the world. This is Whitebeard. The strongest man in the world. You, after all, have changed, Sengoku. Lieutenant General Crane finally stood firm, looked at Sengoku, and was speechless. When Whitebeard tore the island, as the part that was torn apart, there happened to be a naval family town. The group of Blackbeards who had not left the town were covered by the aftermath of Whitebeard's attack. Fortunately, Tiki reacted in time and used the dark curtain to teleport the group out of the attack range, which avoided the end of death before he was ready. But just the aftermath, the Blackbeard pirates were not lightly injured. Wiping the blood from the corners of his mouth, Tiki stood on the edge of the crack, looking down at the bottomless abyss mouth, and there was a trace of burning in his eyes. This is it. That's the power. His ambitions, his dreams are only worthy of this powerful fruit. Come here, Captain, the edge is still crumbling. Come on, little ones, prepare to meet our era. Teach laughed wildly, turned and walked into the passage linking the headquarters of the fortress. After they left, the place where Titch stood before, the dirt rolled, and a woman who was only half left climbed out. Her internal organs were stained with soil, but she seemed to have no consciousness at all, and she was not afraid of death, and calmly climbed to the side of the collapsed house in the distance. The blood drew a stench on the road behind her, but she didn't care at all. Beside the rubble of the wall, leaning against it, the woman digged for a while in her full chest, and found a phone bug with a slightly face Yuhi shaking her head. Phone bugs are a race with a certain intelligence and independent character, not created by humans. Making a phone call is the ability that humans later gave them through transformation, relying on their innate spiritual communication to communicate at a distance. If it were another human being, even if it was a very fragrant scene like taking a bath with a girl, the phone bug would not have such a shy performance. But the person in front of her was different. She had a similar taste in her body, which made the male phone bug reluctant and lost himself. Fortunately, the renovation is time-tested, and the quality is guaranteed. When the number is dialed, it immediately enters the working state. Hey, Becky, how's it going? Guy's big face was vividly simulated by the phone bug. Hearing this, one of the two disasters of the 100 Beast Pirates, Insect Disaster, Betsy stroked her long bewitching wine Yuhi-colored hair, and replied calmly, his targets are Whitebeard and Ice Dragon, but I don't know what he wants to take away from those two monsters. If he just wants to take advantage of the war to pick up the leaks and establish his own new 4 emperors after Whitebeard's death, you don't need to take risks, do you? Speaking of this, Betsy's calm eyes stayed on the other half of the island a few hundred meters away, and said, those two monsters, even if they are seriously injured, can't be dealt with by a mere Blackbeard. This sentence, Becky said very confidently. Because she has not only seen Roha's huge body that covers the sky, but also witnessed the powerful attack of Whitebeard at the scene. These 2 times, each time she felt breathless. The Zerg's sense of danger told her to flee as soon as possible, the farther away the better. It's not that she underestimates Titch, but the level gap between the two sides is really too big, reaching a level far beyond her imagination. After listening to Betsy's answer, Guy frowned. Dark fruits are extremely rare, and even the Devil Fruit Pokédex has only a few words of introduction, and he can't figure out what Titch wants to do. After a pause, Guy made more decisions. He will always reveal his fault. You are still mainly monitoring. If the situation is urgent, I will allow you to come forward to sabotage his plan. The historical text only needs to be left in one person will do, but if you have 2, that's not good. Well, understand. Be careful, Ice Dragon, Loya has arrived on the battlefield. Don't get caught by him, he can touch the soul directly. Hanging up the phone, Betsy listened to the raucous battle behind the high wall and waited quietly. If someone came over at this time, they would probably be scared half to death by the scene around her. Bugs are everywhere, even in the most gorgeous palace. There is absolutely no shortage of creatures like Xiaoqiang in the kitchen. In this case, as an ordinary family town, how many bugs live here? The answer is, there are countless. Bugs of different types and subjects crawled out from every corner, came to the street, and gathered in front of Betsy. Then, start eating each other. Big bugs eat little bugs eat aphids. The arthropods slammed into the ground and made a rustling sound, and any normal person would feel the scalp tingle. But Betsy, who was at the very center, not only did not change her face, she even watched the swarms devour each other with great interest. Humans are always pretentious and think they are the center of the world and that all creatures should live around them. But they're stupid, aren't they? What they're doing, and what you little guys are doing, exactly the same. A few minutes later, there was only one worm left in the swarm, a huge centipede that was taller than a person. With her hands open, Betsy closed her eyes. Then, the huge centipede bit her down and swallowed her. Chapter 631 Appear. Ice Dragon, Loya. It's a lie. Marshall, such a despicable villain. On the Chambord Islands, groups of people rubbed their eyes vigorously, thinking they were dazzled. But Sengoku's one hand stuck around Ace's neck, blocking him in front of him, was still so clear. Why? The Navy, which has always carried out the name of Justice as their supreme commander, would actually use such villainous behavior. How is this different from those vicious pirates? Navy, a bunch of pseudo-cuns. Sitting on the roof, Kid curled his lips in disdain, showing a sneer at the big screen. The rest of the supernovas frowned as well, although not as sarcastically as he was. And, the rest apparently think more. The same enemy, the naval headquarters under an unscrupulous commander, is definitely much more dangerous than that pedantic division of justice. But is this really the case? Leaning against the wall of the alley, Luo had an expressionless face as he greeted Babo and the others to leave. Where are you going, Captain? The battle isn't over yet. There's nothing to see, the guy has arrived. Under the puzzled eyes of a group of subordinates, Luo Kui took a big step forward, and although the rest of the people didn't know what to do, they had to follow up honestly. Forcibly changing the direction of the air shock was also a big challenge for Whitebeard, who was running out of fuel. He suppressed the restless blood, raised his head, and looked at the figure he had known for many years in front of him. Sengoku, you've changed. No, I'm just old, like you. Slowly shaking his head, Sengoku glared angrily. Attack. Kill Whitebeard. The battle continues. Marco and Joes are still their former opponents, Fujitora and Green Bull. The 17th Lieutenant General of the headquarters will face the cadres of the rest of the Whitebeard pirates. And the three generals joined forces for the first time and attacked Whitebeard together. The entire battlefield is full of sword energy and the rays of light are flying. There are many powerful attacks that are rarely seen here, and if you are not careful, you will be hacked to death by the enemy. No one can keep a smile. In this huge meat grinder, human life is the least valuable and least cherished thing. Even the battle-hardened veterans lost their lives as easily as the new recruits who just entered the battlefield. Every minute and every second, countless people fell, and those who were not dead rolled on the ground, and the painful wailing stimulated the nerves of the friendly troops on the verge of collapse. But even so, they will seize the opportunity to give the careless enemy a cold knife and drag him to death. As Loya told Fujitora, wars that cost innocent lives, never have a just side. On the edge of the battlefield, Kirby covered his head in pain and knelt on the ground. The voice that was disappearing every second was like a nightmare, tormenting his soul. No way. Who will help me? What Kirby has is just the observation hockey that has just begun to take shape, and as a veteran of observation hockey, Fujitora's heart is getting colder as he fights. He remembered what Loya had said to him before, saw Sengoku using Ace as a shield, and heard the screams of the soldiers before they died, and he suddenly froze in place. Good chance. Seeing Fujitora stop, Marco seized the opportunity and kicked him hard. Bang! Under the shocked gaze of everyone, the Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters, the monster among monsters, Fujitora, smiled and was kicked away by Marco. What is this guy doing? He's just a pirate. Akainu scolded angrily. Fujitora, what are you talking about? This is a battlefield. Although that kick was powerful, it wasn't enough to kill him. Soon, Fujitora stood up from the pile of rubble, opened his eyes with only the whites of his eyes, and 2 lines of clear tears slid down his cheeks. Is this the justice he wants to enforce? Why is this unsightly appearance? Because there is too much unsightly filth in the world, Fujitora self-destructed his eyes. But at this moment, all this in front of him, even a blind man can still see clearly. Wars deliberately provoked, wars that ruin countless lives, there will never be a just side. So. Enough. Boom. There were traces of purple light on Fujitora's body, and a tremendous force suddenly pressed down on the battlefield. Even Whitebeard, who was fighting against the three generals, couldn't help but stop. The bathrobe on the body ignores the physical rules of the windlass automatic, and the powerful momentum rises into the sky, making people dare not look at it. At this time, Fujitora is a real beast. Suddenly, Fujitora raised his head and roared up to the sky under everyone's attention. What you want me to see, I saw it. Now, let's end all this. Nani, are there any other enemies? A group of people looked around in disbelief. But none of them could catch up with Fujitora in observation hockey, and naturally they couldn't spot Loa in the kilometer-high sky. However, some people showed understanding after hearing Fujitora's words. This includes Crane, Sengoku, the three admirals of the Navy, as well as Blackbeard hidden in the center of the fortress and his former father, Whitebeard. Did you come? Whitebeard raised his head and looked at the empty sky. I am the symbol of the great pirate era and the backbone of this era. As the leader who has subverted this era with one hand, naturally he will not allow himself to continue to live. Ice Dragon, Loya. A soft whisper, resounding in everyone's ears like a spring thunder. Countless people looked up to the sky, waiting for someone to come. And then, it snowed. The first snow in Haiyuan calendar 1520, it fell a little early. The beautiful snowflakes fell lightly, hitting the faces and hands of the people fighting on the battlefield little by little. Whether it was the Navy or the pirates, they all stopped silently at this moment. Suddenly, a breeze blew the snowflakes, making people couldn't help but close their eyes. When they opened it again, a tall and straight figure appeared in the middle of several advanced combat powers. Gorgeous robes, handsome face, with a faint smile, against the backdrop of the snow, like a god. If it weren't for his outstanding record, everyone present was familiar with the blood on his hands, and just relying on this skin, maybe he really regarded him as the noble son of a noble family. However, the pair of ferocious dragons on top of each other's head, and their arrogant aura, made them quickly come back to their senses, and his name appeared in their minds. Ice Dragon, Loya. Coming to the battlefield, Loya first swept around the well-known figures in front of and behind him, and then put his eyes on Fujitora. You say you want me to end this? Yes. So, what do you think I should do? Fujitora is silent. Kill Whitebeard and Ace, let the Navy win. Or kill the Navy to free Ace and let the Whitebeard pirates win the war. In that case, what is the difference between Loya coming or not? Seeing this, Loya sighed. You still chose to escape, Mr. Smile. However, I'm not unprepared. Roha turned back, directly over the top of Akainu's head, and his eyes met the silent Sengoku. With a smile, Loya said, Whitebeard is dead, Ace is alive. How about the end of the war for the Navy? Chapter 632 Turnaround. Only when you experience pain can you understand the beauty of life. This is Loya's view all along. In Sky Island, Loya was going to do this, so that Shandia and Sky Island people would know how to cherish it, but it was mixed by Robin. But this time, Robin didn't stop him. Compared with the small battle at Nakaka Cape on the empty island, the two hostile forces, the Navy and the pirates, the situation is much more complicated. So she didn't say anything. Let the war start. Let them remember the so-called war. What kind of monster is it? As soon as Loya finished speaking, the most ill-tempered Might soldier, Admiral Akainu roared, Why should you decide? In this battle, the Navy will win. However, facing Akainu's questioning, Loya turned a deaf ear and continued to look at Sengoku. The battle has been going on until now, and the casualty rate has exceeded the second half of the war on the top of the original book. It is precisely because of this that Whitebeard chose to listen quietly. Those who died were not cats and dogs, but his closest family members. Even if it's a stone, it should be hot if you put it on your chest for so long. How is it possible to be indifferent? It seems that Ace's life is greater than everything. Loya bluntly said that he wanted to kill him, and silence was Whitebeard's answer. The rest is up to Sengoku to handle. Akainu's face was gloomy, and the violent aura on his body disappeared from time to time. Anger and suffocation, something he had never felt for so many years, but in front of Loya, he was hit again and again. But he didn't dare to do it. Extreme justice does not mean stupidity. He is willing to give his life for justice, but does not want to die in vain. Looking at Loya's eyes seriously, for a long time, Sengoku finally said, "Yes, but I have a request." Huh. Whitebeard's body must be incinerated. Sengoku knew Roha's abilities, and he knew that resurrecting the undead would require, at least, a roughly intact corpse. Turtle Island's power is now beyond surpassing. Even if Whitebeard loses his fruit ability after being undead, the power contained in his 7-meter-high body is enough to shock the world. Hearing this request, Loya smiled knowingly. "Don't worry, I'm not so filthy to the point of attacking his corpse. It is a symbol of an era, and it is due respect for him to be buried in the ground." "Then do as you say." As for where the rescued ace would go, Sengoku didn't care much. Roger's era was not the current era of rampage. Although it was chaotic at that time, there was no one as absolutely powerful as Loya. As long as Loya is unwilling, Sengoku is sure that there will never be a second One Piece in this world. "Dad, don't promise him." Marco and the others shouted anxiously, but like Akainu, no matter how angry and aggrieved they were, they didn't dare to cross Whitebeard and attack Loya. "Goo la la la, what are you bastards thinking?" Whitebeard raised his head and smiled, and hugged Marco in his arms. "I am the strongest Whitebeard in the world, your father. It is uncertain who will win and who will lose." But Marco also wanted to persuade Whitebeard, but was pushed into the distance by the shock of the opponent's wave. "Go farther, you won't be able to get involved in the next battle." So, the war jumped from the meat grinder battlefield where 10,000 people fought to the Ice Dragon, Loya and Whitebeard fighting alone. What's happening here? On the Chambord archipelago, the onlookers expressed their bewildered expressions, unable to keep up with the development of the situation. But aside from those who really knew Akatsuki's inside story, some smart guys figured out the twists and turns in no time. First of all, whether it is Loya or Sengoku, the forces they represent are committed to eliminating pirates. Either side of the two parties has suffered heavy losses, which is a favorite for pirates. The main force of the undead army is concentrated in the New World, followed by the Paradise, in the first half of the Great Route, but above the Four Seas, more people only hear about the Navy, but do not know what the undead army is. Although there are many contradictions, the two forces with exactly the same purpose complement each other. Whichever side is missing is the beginning of another great pirate era. As leaders, Loya and Sengoku certainly didn't want to see that happen. Now that the Navy and the Whitebeard pirates are losing both sides, their foundations have been shaken, so it's not surprising that Loya and Sengoku will come to an agreement. And Whitebeard, his behavior is even better to speculate. Just because he's Whitebeard. It is a symbol of this era. The person who caught him will be publicly executed by the Navy, no matter whether the target is Roger's blood. Is there any reason not to start a war? However, the current situation is that the Navy has a great chance of winning. The Whitebeard pirates' back path has been cut off, and if they continue to fight, they will almost be wiped out. Judging from Whitebeard's character, he wanted to use his life to find a chance for his family. Coherent, logical, and well-founded, this statement spread from reporters and was quickly recognized by most people. At the same time, they also had a clearer understanding of Loya's power. Single-handedly, stop the war between Whitebeard and the Navy headquarters. What terrifying power is this? Of course, the most important thing is that the legend of the previous era, Whitebeard, is finally going to face the pioneers of this era. It can be expected that that scene is definitely more topical than the war on the top. In the Navy headquarters, the pirates and the Navy who received the order distanced themselves and made room. The next battle is going to be two strong men standing at the top of the world, just a small amount of aftermath is enough to tear them to pieces. If the situation is not clear, there may be a big battle, and Sengoku will definitely let the soldiers retreat to the other side of the island. Now he just hopes that Roha can directly show his unrivaled strength, end the battle quickly, and avoid the sinking of Malinfado. After seeing the endless vast ice field, what is the strength of Roha? You can't go wrong with overestimating. But at this moment, it seemed that he had seized an opportunity, and a figure knocked over the naval wall and stepped on Xingxingtai. Ace! Puffing out his cheeks and taking a deep breath, Luffy shouted. Luffy! No one thought that the Straw Hat Boy who hid himself because of Fujitora's suppression and Roha's appearance would appear there at this moment. Is this kid joking? Looking at him in astonishment, Loya shook his head in disbelief. It really is the son of destiny. This brain circuit is also a wonderful thing. Wait a minute, I'll blow this guy away. Get you out of here. On Xingtai, Luffy paused and entered the second gear. Armament Haki, who had just mastered a little, wrapped around his fist and disappeared in the blink of an eye. No, Luffy, run! Ace roared anxiously, trying to pounce on him. However, the restraining effect of Halushi made him weak. In addition, he suffered many punishments in the advancing city, and his body was extremely weak. Because Ace knows that no matter what, the current Luffy can't be Sengoku's opponent. This is indeed the case, and even said that Sengoku didn't take him seriously. He didn't even bother to look back, and the golden Buddha light on his body suddenly turned. Boom. With one punch on the layer of Buddha light, Luffy felt as if he had hit a hard wall, and his arms with the color of the weapon were suddenly overwhelmed and shrunk into a ball. But before he could let out a painful exclamation, a tremendous force suddenly came from that wall, eroding along his arm all the way up. Puff! He spit out a blood Jinchuriki column in the sky. Luffy bit Kiba and flew out with a face full of unwillingness. Chapter 633 Peak Condition. Edward Newgate. Only then did Sengoku slowly turn his head and instructed casually, push up. Let go of me, Bang! The surrounding generals punched up with an old punch, tying up Luffy who was struggling. The other party rammed the Judiciary Island, and this hit the world government in the face, and Sengoku didn't have the time to help them out. However, this kid dared to offend the Navy in the war on the top. Such a serious crime cannot be punished severely. But, not now. The most important thing now is the battle between Loya and Whitebeard. Standing opposite Whitebeard, Loya pointed to the distance and continued to struggle, and occasionally released Luffy of Conqueror's Haki, saying, he is Ace's younger brother, won't you save him? If you leave it alone, I guess he will send to the advanced city. A place like Pushin City is not a tourist attraction. Shanks gave Roger's straw hat to him, I believe his vision. Looking at Loya calmly, Whitebeard waved his sword and rolled up the sword. Besides, my stupid son didn't speak, an outsider, why should I save him? Come on, let me see your means. As you wish. Suddenly, the world changed. The huge magic power is churning in Loya's body, like a dragon gradually awakening, mighty and invincible. In front of this earth-shattering mighty force, even a Whitebeard could not help but change slightly. No longer caring about her own identity, yin-yang white light converged on the blade of Naginata, and the terrifying vibration was continuously compressed in that small space. Drink. Slashed with a knife, the vibration dragged the surrounding space, wrapped in the aura of destruction, and went straight towards Loya. Facing the knife light, even he smelled a dangerous smell. Long-lost start of the dragon's body warning. Is this the power of the Junjun fruit? It's really powerful. The warlike blood that has been immersed in Loya's body for a long time begins to boil. In the face of this powerful attack, he laughed wildly, without dodging or dodging, he punched out straight. Bang! Time seemed to stop for a second, and then, a terrible explosion swept the audience. The mushroom cloud that exploded in situ went straight to the sky, covering the sky and the sun. This kind of spread is enough to cover half of Malinford. Even Whitebeard did not expect that the other party would be able to defeat his own shock head-on. Crap, sons. Suddenly, Whitebeard came back to his senses, looked behind him, and immediately froze in place. What's the matter? In the distant Chambord archipelago, at the moment when the two fought, a piercing alarm sounded suddenly. People were terrified and fled in the streets. Because at the moment when they started, news came from the monitoring station that the vibration and explosion from Malenford caused a terrifying tsunami, which was rapidly attacking Shampoo. With just one move, the Shampoo land, which is far apart, is also affected by the aftermath. So, as a battlefield, Marin Fodor, isn't it already smashed? Thinking of this, countless people raised their heads, looked at the big screen, and then, like Whitebeard, froze. What's that? How come they have nothing to do with it? No, it's frozen. Time is frozen. At this moment, everyone who was watching the live broadcast gasps neatly. On the still clear screen, the entire naval headquarters seems to have become a huge picture scroll, standing still there forever. The ripples of the explosion passed through them, and it was clearly within reach, but it was like two worlds, so close to the horizon. Ice Dragon, Loya, can even time be frozen? How is this power different from a true god? Marco's eyes stayed on the moment before the explosion, without any fluctuation. Whitebeard could see that he wasn't dead, just stuck in a state of cessation. So, freeze time. Shaking his head with a wry smile, Whitebeard couldn't help but feel a little dazed in his heart. In the face of this unspeakable vastness, can he really win? At this moment, Loya withdrew his aching hand and walked behind him. Their time is fixed at the second before we do it. In our sense of time, after about 10 minutes, the confinement will disappear. So, let go of the hand and fight. Don't have any worries. After listening to Loya's words, Whitebeard was silent for a moment and changed the subject. No matter who we lose or who wins, Sengoku will never let Ace go. He has changed, he is no longer the Sengoku we were familiar with before. Quote. Because the time and space around the Navy headquarters was frozen, except for the vigorous video phone bugs on the distant warships, there was no third living creature here who could hear their voices, and some words were no longer scruples. One Piece's bloodline must be cleared. At this point, Sengoku is more decisive than Loya. Don't worry, it's about my face, I have my own arrangements. Saying that, Loya threw it forward, and a tube of green injection landed on Whitebeard's hand. The powerful life energy contained in it, even the Whitebeard, who belongs to a layman, can clearly feel it, and asked in shock, "What is this?" SPX-11, some kind of extract from the Mephisto family's secret treasure, a powerful recovery potion. Guy Duo relied on this to survive my lore. Standing behind Whitebeard, Loya slowly moved his hands and feet. However, at that time, he could only use SPX-9, which was 2 levels lower than this. Because even he could only endure at most. That level of vitality fills the body. Anyway, you will die both vertically and horizontally. With your physique, you can use SPX-11 for 10 minutes, right? So, come on, let's have a good fight. Goo la la la, it's funny, it's so funny, kid, you have to think about it. Suddenly, Whitebeard looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. Even Roger back then had to be afraid of the power of my heyday. Now there are people who dislike me for being too weak. Gu la 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 la. Never mind. Whitebeard put away the smile on his face, and boldly pulled off his cloak, revealing his upper body covered with scars. He held the syringe in his backhand, poked it at his heart, and pushed a syringe of liquid into his body, without any hesitation about what kind of poison it would be. With the blood flowing, the tube of fluid quickly swept through every corner of his body. Bang! Suddenly, a powerful coercion burst out from that old body. There is no need to manipulate, there will be terrible vibrations. A trace of transparent and whitened cracks appeared around Whitebeard's sturdy body, and it was just the aftermath of the shock that penetrated the body, and the atmosphere began to collapse. The power gradually recovered and superimposed, making Whitebeard's eyes from dim to bright, and even turned into a dazzling light source. The old Madara on the face quickly dissipated, the skin began to become shiny, the muscles were tight and bulging. Soon, the one who reappeared in front of Loya was a man who was about 40 years old and was at the peak of his life. Terrible monsters of the period. Whitebeard. Edward Newgate. I got the shaking fruit at the age of 30. I thought my body was strong enough to withstand the side effects of the fruit's ability. But I didn't expect that, just after the age of 50, my body was getting worse and worse, and I could no longer exert the strength of the past. Quote. Looking at the young man in front of him, Whitebeard's eyes were full of enthusiasm, and he said with great emotion, "Now, I am more than 72 years old. 20 years. A full 20 years. A wonderful control force developed the Junjun fruit to the deepest awakening stage, but I hated not having a body that matched it, leaving me stuck in place and useless. Like a kiba that was pulled out, a tiger with a broken claw." After a moment of silence, Whitebeard's fighting spirit gradually increased. Looking at Loya, a sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth. "You said that the old man must die. Then have you ever thought you will die here too?" Air shock. Chapter 634 The Awakening Power of the Shaking Fruit. Once there was a love. Ahem. There was an opportunity in front of me, but I didn't cherish it, and I regretted it after I lost it. If God can give me another chance to choose, be sure to get only the SPX-10, not the SPX-11 with just one. The attack that came in the face was no longer a shock. It was the entire space, the entire world, attacking Loya with its own might. Crashed. Do not. Even more terrifying. Before the Whitebeard shot, he was so old that he was able to divide the sea area of hundreds of square kilometers into pieces of tofu. And now at the peak of his shot, a thick crack across the world appeared directly on the top of Loya's head. Even looking down from outer space, there is an obvious gap at the position of Mullen Fodor at this moment. It's as if this planet was forcibly shaken by a crack under this move. In the face of this earth-shattering attack of ghosts and gods, even Mary Joa on the Yuhi soil continent can see it clearly. No one can imagine what kind of threat is faced by Loya, who is at the center of the battle. However, in the boundless vibration, a wild laughter sounded. At the same time, there is also a shaking that goes straight to the soul. Conqueror's Haki. In the face of Whitebeard's absolute attack, Roha finally took the last step and awakened his Conqueror's Haki. Ha 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 ha. This is the fight I want. Whitebeard. Come on, let's fight. Dragon Slayer. Profound truth. The land of the end. As big as the cracks are, the ice sheets are as big as they are. A line of Bailien rose from the sky, spreading and circling, blocking the front like a canopy. The next moment, the huge body of the awakened Dragon King Loya rushed out of the vibration area, like a wild beast, opening his mouth and spit out a violent ice tornado. The ice dragons. Roar. Good come. Whitebeard's face was also full of smiles. Seeing that Roha used the power of ice to freeze the vibration of the space, he immediately threw out the big Naginata knife and cut across it. Laugh. That sound is like slicing a plate of smoothie open with a knife. Before the ice tornado was approaching, it was cut open by Whitebeard. But at this time, Loya had already rushed in front of him. Try this. Ice Dragon's Frost Fist. Fighting is not about strength. Ice Dragon Kid. One blue and one white, two lights and shadows rushed out of the earth-shattering atmosphere. The blue frost and the endless vibration collided together, stirring the entire sky and the earth without a cloud. Just relying on strength, the two Whitebeards together are not Loya's opponents. However, he developed the shock fruit to the deepest level of the awakening stage. The overlapping shocks blocked in front of his fists, which could not only offset the terrifying strange power of Roha, but also block the terrifying cold current that penetrated his heart. Boom, boom. Neither side could do anything to the other, the stalemate could not be reached, and the two forces chose to self-destruct. The Chambord Islands had already fallen into a panic when the two were fighting. They thought that the headquarters of the Navy was so far away from this moment, no matter how fierce the battle was, it should not be affected here. However, the first tsunami warning led to countless panic. This is the inevitable consequence of Whitebeard's actions, but it is a little stronger than before, and it is still within the scope of their understanding. As a result, Whitebeard returned to his peak period inexplicably, and even through the extra decades of life insights, he was stronger than his peak period. Just one trick. The live broadcast screen was pitch black, and dozens of phone bugs died instantly. In a few areas outside the Chambord Islands, the roots and branches of the world's largest yuhi tree, Alchiman yuhi tree, were directly uprooted. This is just the aftermath of the fight. Shampoo land at such a distance has suffered. Is this kind of power really something that humans can have? If the scene of Loya freezing time just now gave them a kind of reverence for seeing the gods, then now, it is complete panic. Because this is completely beyond their understanding, the gods fight. The camera returns to Malenford. The big explosion just now did no damage to both Loya and Whitebeard. Whether it is hard resistance or fruit ability, they can be easily blocked. After 2 trials, the 2 sides also clearly saw the position of the other side and did not dare to hold back, and then the battle really began. Click. 5 iron Jinchuriki column-like fingers grabbed forward fiercely, and the entire space was lifted up by the Whitebeard like a quilt. The tearing and vibration of the space shattering pressed down on Loya, leaving countless dense cracks on the smooth scales. Until now, Roja did not understand what the power of Whitebeard's shaking fruit was awakened. Tianyasha, Don Quixote da Flamingo's thread fruit, the awakening power is to assimilate everything around him and turn it into a thin thread for him to drive. Rao Kun, Bartholomew Bear, after awakening, can bounce things that only exist in a conceptual sense, such as injuries, as if they were real. Then it is also a superhuman type, the shock fruit. What is its awakening power? The answer is pass. The essence of vibration is a process of periodically changing state, with a frequency that can be observed, and requires a transmission medium. And Whitebeard, his awakening ability is to transmit the vibration farther and higher. It seems that there is no essential change, or even meaningless, but you must know that the shock attack itself is a process of transmission. This increases the most powerful change for Whitebeard. As long as he thinks and dares to risk his life, the entire One Piece world can be included in his attack range. In the same way, as one of the warring parties, Luoya found that he could not avoid the attack from Whitebeard at all, and all the shocks were taken as a single receipt. Because the entire space he is in is within the opponent's range. There is no way to avoid it, only hard resistance. Puff. The terrifying vibration squeezed everything, and even Loya couldn't help spitting out blood. Seeing this, Whitebeard laughed loudly. Is it really a miscalculation? Ice Dragon, Loya. Your abilities are all in freezing and undead, you really want to fight head-on, not my opponent. If Loya uses the power of freezing time and space to directly attack Whitebeard, then even if it is the peak of the peak, Whitebeard believes that there is no way to deal with it. There is a specialization in the surgery industry, and his eyes are blackened by this kind of power. However, as he said, Rualoya gave up this advantage and chose to be tough with him. Then his shock will teach Loya to be a man, proving that his world's strongest title is not groundless. However, after listening to Whitebeard's words, Loya was not discouraged. Cut, that's not necessarily. Standing up slowly, Loya patted the blood on the scales, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Do you think you can really kill me? On his chest, where the frontal was hit hard, the broken scales healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Almost as soon as the words were finished, the scales that had been infiltrating bloodshots were restored to their original state, and no scars could be seen. This kind of resilience, even if there are more guys, it can't match. Seeing this, Whitebeard frowned. His knowledge of the ice dragon fruit comes from the information on the sea. I have heard about the amazing resilience of Roja, but no one can verify it, but there is such a saying in the Navy. After all, that's ice dragon, Loya. If you want to test whether the information about his powerful recovery ability is true or false, you have to have the ability to hurt him too. What Whitebeard did not expect was that this information was not only true, but also far underestimated Loya. Where is this recovery? This is simply regeneration. Chapter 635 Fight. Tianyu is coming. When two of the top powerhouses at the time started to fight, what kind of scene would it be? Today, for the first time, the world has a clear understanding of this problem that has plagued the world for countless years. What a conspiracy! What a force to oppress people! Under that vast power, it is meaningless at all. Renner and others calculated in every possible way, one person and one punch, all turned into nothingness. Entering Mary Joa, Carlo looked at the halo in the sky, and his heart was hot. This is the power of ancient weapons. Even if the Whitebeard has the talent of the sky and the powerful ability of the fruit of the shock, it takes a lifetime to develop from a green teenager to a white-haired Madara, but it is not an opponent of the King of Heaven, who has only appeared for a few years. The Antonio family has been inherited from before the establishment of the world government, and it is the most powerful family. Carlo knows much more than ordinary people, even the other Tianlong people. He clearly knew that, as the three ancient weapons that existed in this world, the Heavenly King was the most powerful one. Because whether it is Pluto or Sea King, they are two artificial weapons developed by them in order to fight against the King of Heaven. Only the King of Heaven is immortal and exists forever. Before Loya appeared, the previous generation of Heavenly Kings existed in the forbidden area of the family. When he thought that that guy had more power than Loya, Carlo felt a scorching heat in his heart. With this help, why worry about the great cause? Naval Headquarters, on the battlefield. SPX-11 brought Whitebeard back to the peak, and the powerful life energy made him break through to an unprecedented state. But he knows that this effect is not eternal. If he can't solve Loya before the external vitality is exhausted again, he will have no chance. Looking at the huge dragon man who had recovered in a blink of an eye, Whitebeard held the naginata back in his hand, took a deep breath, and then rushed forward. What if the resilience is nearly regenerated? As long as he creates an attack that reaches the upper limit of recovery, even if Roja has a terrifying recovery power, there is nothing he can do. Competing in attack power, no one will lose the fruit. Cut. With a horizontal slash, the exaggerated vibration force shredded the scales on Loya's arm 10 meters away. The blood just flowed out, and was scattered by the magic power shrouded around him. At this moment, Loya understood a truth, that is to fight recklessly with Whitebeard, it's really a brain height. No, Ader. With a backhand move, the ice blue magic circle emerged out of thin air, and large chunks of ice fell to the ground and skyrocketed, forming an ice wall blocking the front of the knife light. Loya's ice has evolved several times, and has long surpassed the hardness of ordinary steel, but in the face of Whitebeard's vibration, it still looks so thin. Boom! Scoff! The knife light and ice that were wrapped in vibration stalemate for a second, and then they were cut in half. But this time is enough to do a lot of things. Almost at the moment when the ice appeared, Loya rushed forward. Around the huge body, little bits of blue light Madara gradually condensed, covering him with a light blue veil. I saw the light curtain circulating, and the power of blue ice gathered in his palm. The surrounding temperature is getting higher. This was Whitebeard's first reaction. No, where did the ice go? This is Whitebeard's second reaction. The palpitating sense of crisis rushed to his forehead. Whitebeard subconsciously let go of the naginata, and folded his hands in front of him. His response was undoubtedly correct. When the naginata cut through the ice blue in Loya's palm had already made him feel an unprecedented crisis. And, right in front of him, close at hand. Snapped. He clenched his fists and made a thunderous explosion. Loya changed his palms into fists, and waved his fists with the force of the impact and backswing, and the ice blue energy escaped uncontrollably, leaving blue tassels where the fists passed, just like the Arctic Circle. The aurora is general, charming and dazzling. Dragon Slayer profound truth. Tianyu is here. Hum. Bang. It sounds complicated to think and deal with, but in fact, from Whitebeard's wielding the knife to Loya's punching, only 1 second has passed, and this is the second that was just one. When the fist landed on Whitebeard's arm, the layers of shocks collapsed instantly. A white light with the thickness of a thumb, with a strong sense of death, spurted out from the position where the two collided, leaving a dark space gap along the way. What power is this? This white light that destroys everything. Feeling the breath of dead silence, and seeing that his own vibrations seemed like nothing in front of it, Whitebeard was extremely shocked. Can't stop. Will die. The answer given by instinct, Whitebeard will not question. Drink. Get me up. With a loud shout, Whitebeard suddenly pushed upwards despite the danger of his arm being pierced. The shock that erupted at the same time condensed into a stream, and bombarded Loya's arm from the bottom up. Laugh. The next moment, from a distance, a white light Jinchuriki column rises diagonally into the sky. The dead silence is despairing, and just by observing a trace, countless people fall into madness. Whitebeard's response is very correct. The attack range of Tianyu's arrival is only 1 line. And the position of this line is determined by the arm that Loya launched the attack. If you want to change the direction of this line, you have to lift Loya's hand. But, the two Whitebeards combined can't compete with Loya. But also don't forget, the shaking fruit is the most powerful force of Whitebeard. The shock bombarded his arm, and at that moment, blood flowed from Loya's right hand, and before Baiguang completely broke through Whitebeard's defense, he was beaten to the sky. And the Whitebeard is not bad either. When the white light was missed, it also quickly passed over his arm. Boom. Crash. Not to be outdone, the two heads collided together. With the strength of the shock, the two sides quickly pulled away from each other, plowed 2 pits on the ice layer, and then gasped heavily. Standing in the land of the end, Tianyu, who burst out with all his strength, came, and that kind of power, even Loya was not light. I thought that this move could completely kill Whitebeard in seconds, but he didn't expect it to be cracked, and instead took a shock attack from the opponent. At this moment, almost all the scales on Loya's right arm were peeled off, revealing the broken muscles and bones below. The blood was not dripping on the ice layer under his feet, but a faucet-like stream, which formed a pool of blood in the blink of an eye. However, Whitebeard is equally bad, even worse. The power of Tianyu's arrival broke through his shock defense, and the rest of the time was won by the peak-level armament hockey and strong muscle defense. By the time he condensed and shook and shot, Tianyu's arrival had completely broken through the defense, and began to smash and disintegrate indiscriminately. Even if it was just passing by, there were 2 conspicuous gaps left on the wrists of Whitebeard's hands, like a piece of radish that had been bitten off by someone. Senrin's bones are exposed, and the transparent ice crystals covering it add a bewitching beauty to this Senrin. The blood from the wound could not flow out, and the Ice Dragon Slayer magic power penetrated into the body and froze inside his body. There was a purple-blue color on Bybird's face, which was the trace of frozen blood pumping with the heart, and the ice slag accumulated in the blood vessels. SPX 11 feet's powerful vitality gushed out and wanted to repair the wound, but was strongly blocked by Loya's dragon-slaying magic, and in desperation, he could only choose to cancel each other out and could not get close to the wound at all. With such a move, both sides turned out to be a loser. Chapter 636 Resonance. Whitebeard's Death Fight. Taking the time to relieve his breath, Whitebeard asked softly, "What is this trick called?" "Tianyu is coming. How about it? It's strong enough, right?" Loya grinned with a strong fighting intent on his face. "Now you still feel that the front is hard and I can't help you." "Boo la la la, I admit that you did threaten me. But if you want to defeat me, it's still a long way to go, kid." Whitebeard laughed wildly, suddenly stepped forward, and stood up straight. "He's still seriously injured, but so what? And Loabi recovery." In that hand, in the few seconds they spoke, purple granulation had sprout, the bone fragments were pieced together, and the crack had completely healed. "If you wait any longer, Loya will soon be intact again, and he can't afford it." Squatting slightly to stand firm, Whitebeard's hands that were about to be severed crossed his chest left and right, condensing a terrifying vibration. Completely desperate fight, no need to keep hands. So. Air shock. Click. Atmospheric vibrations, cracks appear. But this time, the attack that Roja expected did not fall on him, but instead fell on Whitebeard himself. This is suicide. Loya frowned and suddenly widened his eyes. Do not. Wrong. He is shocking, and he is not afraid of such shocks at all. Well. Roger couldn't force me to make this move, but you did it. So, be proud, kid. White light appeared around Whitebeard. It was a shock compressed to the ultimate, and the formation was terrifying. Halo. When attacking with the Naginata, the small ball of vibrating light on the blade has the power to tear the sky, but now Whitebeard uses himself as a knife, wrapping the vibration compressed into the ultimate around himself. This trick has a very common name. Whitebeard's voice gradually amplified in Loya's ear, and when the last word came out, he had already crossed time and space and came behind Loya. Call resonance. Bang. Resonance. Whitebeard uses his own shocking characteristics to bless himself with the extreme vibrations he exerts. And because of the resonance, this vibration is not used up, and the vibration force involved will be infinitely superimposed and amplified within the limited range of Whitebeard's body. Until he couldn't hold it any longer and exploded and died. But correspondingly, in this state, the power of Whitebeard will be infinitely enhanced. Either you die or I die. It's a move that Whitebeard really uses to fight for his life. Even at the peak of his youth, Whitebeard never used this trick. Because every time resonance is used, the sequelae of those moves in the second and third gears used by Luffy to stimulate his potential are more serious, and they directly hurt the root cause. Sudden death on the spot is not impossible. But at this moment, Whitebeard doesn't need it. Even he himself does not know why. He has never been so eager to win. Is it because of the side effects of SPX11? Or the last madness after getting old? Whitebeard couldn't answer. He just knew that he had to win. Because he is Whitebeard. The strongest man in the world. Break apart in the endless shaking. Ice Dragon Kid. Wrapped in a huge vibrational force, Whitebeard's punch gave Roja the illusion that Silver's fist was enlarged in front of him during the elite assessment before he had grown up. But. Ha ha ha. Be your mother's spring and autumn daydream. Snapped. The thick dragon tail swung back, and the air slapped with a crackling sound, like a giant python, suddenly wrapped around Whitebeard's inevitable fist. As soon as they came into contact, even with the triple power defense, Roja's tail hammer shattered like glass, revealing the white bones below. But it's enough time. Swish. Suddenly turned into a black line, Loya dodged and left the place. At the same time, he gave up thinking and clenched his fists according to the instinctual warning. At this moment, even time stopped for a second, and then. Boom, boom. Under the tumbling of smoke and dust, the color of the world changed. Two fists about the same size pressed against each other, not yielding to each other. But judging from the results, Loya suffers more. A blood mist burst out from the right hand that had just healed, dyeing Loya's scales with Yuhi. Although it wouldn't break directly, it would be useless in a short time. Whitebeard obviously found this too, seized the opportunity to kick up and kicked Loya out. Puff. Yang Tian spit out a mouthful of blood mixed with visceral fragments, and Loya disappeared into the sky in an instant. In the end still careless. No, it should be said that Loya underestimated the Twilight Tiger Whitebeard. With the blessing of the vibration force, even the space can't bear the vast power. As a part of space, what about air? Through the rebound of the meatball fruit, the bear can make himself move instantaneously without air resistance, and the current Whitebeard can also do this through vibration. Nothing can stop him, it's true teleportation. Don't try to run. Of course, Whitebeard wouldn't give Loya any time to continue to recover, only to see his footsteps paused and disappeared in place in the blink of an eye. Then the next moment, the sky in the distance suddenly burst into a halo that blocked the sky and the sun, which was the shock aftermath of the two fighting again. The halo spreads outward, causing the sea to tumble and roll up the waves. Terrible forces converge in midair, and the creatures that are affected and died do not know how much. No one could see the battle in midair clearly, only the aftermath that continued to descend from the sky to the earth. The shattered sky and islands proved the intensity of the battle. Boom! Suddenly, white light appeared. The two figures crashed to the ground from the sky and rolled on the ground. At this moment, if there may still be bystanders, they will find that the state of the two is not good. Whitebeard in the resonance state is very strong, but it takes time to accumulate, and his strength is limited at this moment. Head to head, Loya was just pressed and beaten, not hung and beaten. In midair, the two played against each other several times, and Loya exchanged injuries for injuries, and finally seized the opportunity and played the second Tianyu arrival. That deadly white light made Whitebeard fearful and did not dare to resist. As soon as he hesitated, Loya seized the opportunity and kicked him down. Until this time, although he didn't want to admit it, Whitebeard couldn't deny that even if he used his last whole card, he couldn't kill Loya. The name of the strongest in the world can really change hands. But the fight is over until the end. Boo la la la, come again. Iron Jinchuriki column-like fingers stuck on the ground. Whitebeard forcibly stopped rolling, and rushed over again. In response, the corners of Loya's mouth twitched, and her face was black and oily. This is a lunatic. A real lunatic. But at the same time, Loya is also very happy. After turning into an ice dragon, he has not felt this hardy battle for a long time. The span is too large, and if you are not careful, you will be invincible, which makes Loya very uncomfortable. And you haven't become bald, are you angry? The beauty of the flower of life blooming and withering, the white beard made Loya see it clearly. If that's the case, then it's a cowardice, it's just a fight. Chapter 637 Regret. Boom, boom, boom. Every collision gives people the illusion that the world is about to collapse. The position where the two fought was near the end of the first half of the Great Route, but even on the other side of the planet, the aftermath of this earth-shattering war was suffocating. I don't know when, the world is already covered with dark clouds, and the purple-black thunder rolls endlessly in the clouds, like the end of the world. The ignorant people were restless, so they had to kneel on the ground, look up at the sky, and pray for the forgiveness of the gods. This time, the dark cloud climate all over the world, accompanied by volcanic eruptions and tsunamis, swept the whole world. No one knows why, because they can't understand this divine power. If you have to find an explanation for this phenomenon, it is God, angry. However, Whitebeard and Roja, who are both sides of the war, don't care about it. What if Tianwei? In their battle, there is no room for any existence to point fingers and fingers. Those purple-black thunders and dark clouds became a foil instead. It seemed that the battle could not be stopped. Tianwei was deadlocked for a moment and silently chose to wait and see. That feeling, the feeling of being ignored, as if God is fighting with the air. Facing the two terrifying monsters on the battlefield, Illusion Nightmare chose to back down. Because of its power, it could no longer interfere with this level of battle. However, it still has a back. In the center of the battlefield, Roja and Whitebeard couldn't remember how many times this was their first fight. The two figures were entangled together, and you came and went. Relying on his resilience, Loya will never be knocked down, and Whitebeard's resonance has reached the limit, but it is always a little off. Rumbling. When the confrontation ended again, the space was shattered, and the two finally had time to separate. Whitebeard has turned into a dazzling light source, and cracks appear on the surface of his body. This is proof of reaching the limit. The next time he starts, it is very likely that he will fall first. Because his body can no longer accommodate stronger vibrations. But on the surface, Loya was hurt even more. In the face of the unlimited enhancement of Whitebeard, his recovery ability has long been unable to keep up with the damage he has received. At this moment, he can only barely maintain his standing. Like a candle in the wind, it will fall when it blows. Next move, decide the outcome. Therefore, the strongest man in the world, Whitebeard, decided to use the most powerful attack to establish his victory in one fell swoop. Danger. Dragon's body unprecedented rapid warning. That feeling of palpitations is the only case in Loya's life. Looking at the Whitebeard rushing in front, obviously there was no sign of an attack, Loya resolutely chose to use his trump card. Hum. The huge magic power shot up into the sky, and I saw him move up with his backhand, and this still world suddenly trembled. Click. As if the mirror surface was broken, a simple sword exuding endless breath slowly fell from the crack in the sky. It was an unremarkable great sword, with no features other than the size of nearly 30 meters. However, with just one glance, Whitebeard felt an endless threat. It's as if he saw the bloody machete on the bandit's hand when he was young. At that time, the bandit didn't care about him, a beggar-like orphan, and ignored him as he continued to search for property. But at this moment, this machete is coming straight at him. Snapped. The giant sword fell, and Roja fought with the few magic powers in his body, and his body suddenly soared, from 5 meters shorter than Whitebeard, to more than 20 meters. With a backhand, he grabbed the hilt of the sword in his hand, and with the power of turning around, Roja twisted his waist and slashed with a sword. Dragon Slayer martial skills sweep thousands of armies. A breath of revival Hiroshi shot out from the blade of the sword, drawing an arc in the air, targeting the head of Whitebeard. He wants to completely establish his victory before Whitebeard's ultimate move. Humph. Naive. Whitebeard understood the threat of this move, and his forward body froze suddenly. The vibration broke out under his feet, and even the void was shattered by his foot. With this force, Whitebeard ignored the rules of physics and turned 90 degrees into the sky in an instant. Laugh. A sword of heavenly power. Just when Whitebeard just left the place, the whole sea was silent, and a crack that could not see the head suddenly cracked open. The eyes of the swimming fish and sea beasts in the sea quietly turned into two halves with the doubts they had before they were frozen. Whether it's a hard rock or something else, it's all divided into two under this sword. The next moment, the figure of Whitebeard appeared in front of Roja, and the naginata returned to his hand at some point, condensing an extremely huge vibrational force. Looking at Loya in front of him, he shouted and slashed down. Break heaven. PFF'd. Crash. Loya only felt a dazzling white light burst out from where the Whitebeard was, and then a piercing pain spread from his chest. On the Chambord Islands, even if there is no live broadcast, the picture falls into darkness, but at this moment, it is enough. Because of that slash that cut through the sea, the Chambord archipelago was torn apart, turning into two groups of islands that were far apart. And that dazzling white light, even if you look from here, you can see an arc-shaped knife light hanging across the sky. Wherever the knife light can reach, the obvious crack in the sky is extremely dazzling. Just looking at it, it makes countless mentally unstable people fall into madness and despair. Lightning and dark clouds rolled in layers, and a terrifying breath came from the black cracks. It was an apocalyptic scene. The power of the two of them to fight in the end is beyond the limit of this world. A few more times, maybe before they end their fight, this area will collapse on its own. Thinking of this, the group of supernovas who were standing on the sidelines could no longer be amazed, and hurriedly greeted their subordinates to leave. Perhaps here, only the Fishman Island under the seabed of 10,000 meters can avoid being affected. Whitebeard slashed with one sword, and the naginata immediately disintegrated into countless stars. The material of the naginata that has accompanied him for a lifetime is good, but it can't withstand such a powerful attack. He suddenly spit out a mouthful of blood, and fell from the sky with a sluggish breath. The stationary naval headquarters was naturally unobstructed. After Whitebeard rolled in the square for a while, he finally stood firm. This knife embodies what he has learned all his life, and it also brings together the true power of the Junjun fruit. Even in his heyday at this moment, who has a higher realm than 20 years ago, he can only use it once. If such a move can't kill Loya, then his white beard can also rest under Ju Izumi. Because such an enemy is absolutely impossible for him to defeat. Spitting out the blood in his mouth, Whitebeard stood proudly, frowning at the sky, waiting for Akatsuki's answer. Suddenly, Loya's voice came from behind him, and before he could react, a sword stabbed straight through his chest. Behind him, Loya let out a sigh. It's a pity. Wow. That big sword only penetrated his body with a small section at the tip of the sword, but just like that, it also left a hideous wound on Whitebeard's body from shoulder to abdomen. He took a step forward and stood firm, and Whitebeard spat out a large pool of blood. With a roar, he slapped the tip of the sword that came out through his body with a slap, forcing the dragon-slaying sword directly out of his body. Until then, he had no time to observe Loya. I saw that on the torso of the huge dragon man, there was also a huge crack from the shoulders to the lower abdomen. Judging from the granulation that was constantly wriggling inside, I am afraid that most of the internal organs were damaged by this move, and it was only a short distance from death. One line. But, that's all. He is still alive, and his own vitality has been cut off. The blood from Loya's wound gushed out like a gate, and the orangutan blood Yuhi had a dazzling blue light. Even the resilience of the dragon's body could not heal in a short time. Whitebeard's slash just now crossed time and space, beyond the scope of human understanding, and even he had nowhere to hide, no way to make any moves. Loya could only watch the knife light fall on him, and the vibration that ripped apart everything suddenly penetrated into the body. But in addition to himself, Loya has external forces. This external force is exactly the dragon-slaying sword in his hand. Chapter 638 Hope. The dragon-slaying sword was crafted by Loken using unknown ores as raw materials. Yes, Kankan. When Loya checked the sword for the first time, he found that it was still an unfinished dragon-slaying great sword. It's like a car. It has an external shape, but the internal engine and seat cushions have not been installed, and it looks completely like a product. But even so, the hardness of that shell is outrageous. In front of it, Halu stone was like soft tofu, and it was cut open lightly. With this level of hardness, more than half of Whitebeard's slashes and vibrations were blocked by the dragon-slaying sword. The ones that can really fall on Loya are already out of 10. If you completely eat this trick, even Loya will be a fall. No matter how powerful the dragon's body is, it is impossible to block this shocking blow that embodies Whitebeard's whole life's hard work and shocks. That's why Loya said, "It's a pity." It was as if God's will was so general, and it was entirely due to the lack of energy after the Dragon Slayer martial skill was used, and the dragon-slaying sword was blocked in front of him. But just at this moment, Whitebeard made his strongest blow. In the dark, there are certain numbers. On the battlefield, the two stared at each other, silent. After that sword, all the vitality in Whitebeard's body was cut off. Even with the repeated nourishment of SPX 11 feet's vitality, his body would inevitably change towards an old appearance. You are very good, kid. No one has ever been able to leave a wound on my back, you are the first. Whitebeard's face that reappeared on the old man Madara's face showed a hint of disappointment, and shook his head, and I did it in my heyday, which is even more commendable. It's just. Suddenly, Whitebeard laughed. You didn't win. Boom, boom. At this moment, in the distance, as far as the eye can see, the Yuhi soil continent that surrounds the entire planet suddenly exploded with a crack. Thousands of tons of boulders are flying all over the sky, bringing up billowing sand, splattering and collapsing down. The whole planet is trembling, not like, but really doomsday. Because the Yuhi continent, which has been standing still for many years, has been lying here since the beginning of the planet's existence, it was shocked by this knife, which cut a wide gap of nearly 10,000 meters. Holy Land, Mary Joa was in chaos, and the knife light exploded not far from the Holy Land. Standing on the roof of your own house, you can see that bottomless ravine. Of course, that also means that their house does not collapse in the shaking, and there is still a roof to speak of. The shock brought by the knife just now not only split the Yuhi soil continent, but the opening opened a passage for the first half and the second half of the Great Root. From now on, Even if you don't pass through Fishman Island and marry Joa, the world will be able to use this passage to reach the new world directly. Aware of this scene, Loya's eyes widened. Whitebeard. He never thought that in the attack just now, the other party even carried such an idea. Not only was he sure that he couldn't stop it, but he also used this knife to open up a new way of life for the pirates. Even if he dies, he will continue the era of the great pirates. Even if you die, you must use your own life to open up a new path for the world. Even if I die, I have to tell the world that hope has not been cut off. Humiliation. And the anger of being destroyed by the other party's plan. Let Loya's regret disappear in an instant. He raised the dragon-slaying sword and looked at the Whitebeard whose vitality was constantly dissipating in front of him. His face was cold. Any last words, Whitebeard? Yes, there are too many. At this moment, Whitebeard has completely changed back to his old age. The effect of SPX-11 has finally passed, and the powerful backlash has left his skin covered with bloodstains, like broken porcelain. There was a hint of regret in the old voice, and Whitebeard murmured in a low voice. However, if it's a last word, it's still the same sentence. Boom. The sound was like a deep bell, and he stepped on the ground and smashed the hard stone slab of the square. Bulging up the last trace of strength that didn't dissipate in his body, Whitebeard widened his eyes and roared up to the sky. One Piece. It's real. The moment Whitebeard spoke, Loya immediately noticed something was wrong. When he was about to start, the sudden fluctuations in the air made him have to stop. Because time stands still and disappears. This ability to stop the fantasy nightmare through the interference of foreign objects is not his Mokobatmo after all. When he was stagnant and escaped, if he insisted on taking action, waiting for his fate would be detected by the nightmare, directly squeezed out of this world, and never returned. Therefore, Loya could only watch Whitebeard helplessly and shout out that last sentence. And, with the last bit of vibration in his body, Whitebeard's voice was like a bell, spreading his voice to every corner of the world. And then, the world boils over. For the others who were interrupted and paused, time was just a second. When they woke up from the still state, they saw the severely injured Whitebeard standing there quietly. The first reaction was obvious to everyone, knowing that Loya had won. But then, Whitebeard's remarks made everyone's eyes widen in shock. Dad. Marco was the first to react, leaping in the air and coming to Whitebeard's side. But at this time, Whitebeard maintained a glaring stance, and was already breathless. Dad. Immediately, Marco froze in place. Ignoring the reaction of the guys from the Whitebeard pirates, Loya suddenly moved his ears, covered his wound and shouted, "Do it!" Swish. Almost at the same time, an outrageous aura rose into the sky. Sengoku raised his Buddha palm and slapped Ace on Xingxingtai angrily. He is going to completely cut off Roger's blood. Even if it costs you your own life. But what Sengoku didn't know was that Loya had made arrangements long before he showed anything strange. At this moment, I saw a flash of golden light, and the impact of the Buddha was shot on Xingxingtai, but it was only a lonely shot. Immediately, Sengoku roared angrily, "Kazuna! Are you going to betray the navy?" In the distance, Kizaru's figure was revealed, and in his arms was Ace, who was weeping bitterly. Hearing Sengoku's roar, Kizaru shrank his head and smiled shyly. "Sorry, Marshal, I have no choice but to." But after saying so, he quickly took out a key in his hand and put it into the keyhole of the Halu stone lock. Then, opened it with a click. The power returned to the body. Ace watched all this blankly, and the dull brain did not understand what was going on. Seeing this, Kizaru threw away the key, and the whole person instantly turned into a golden light and disappeared in place. At the speed at which he exploded regardless of the burden, Sengoku may have reached thousands of miles away in just the moment he raised his head. In the empty sky, only Kizaru's voice full of grievances remained. "It was Loya who forced me to do this. Go find him if you want." For a while, the audience was silent. Chapter 639 Akainu broke his arm. Marco looked at Loya with a complicated expression, and wanted to thank him, but he couldn't say anything. This man saved Ace and was their benefactor. But killing Whitebeard at the same time is their enemy. Whether it's a benefactor or an enemy, he can't tell. Glancing at him, Loya took a deep breath and said, "Go away with your people. Before I change my mind. Or you can try." Speaking of this, there was a wicked smile on the corner of Loya's mouth. "Can you keep me under serious injury? Avenge your father. Seriously injured. Right. Loya is also injured." It was only at this moment that everyone realized that, Ice Dragon, Loya killed Whitebeard, but after that, he also suffered an unbearable heavy blow. Looking at the huge wound, I am afraid that an ordinary person would have died a long time ago. Only with such a powerful body as the Ice Dragon, can he maintain his composure, and he has enough confidence in his words. So, would you like to try it? The gap is so huge, and Elo's resilience can't be healed in a short time. This question was not only for Marco, but also for the navies present. Countless people are struggling, considering whether to do it or not. But, no need, let's go. After the death of Whitebeard, the captain of the first team, Marco, was the most authoritative member. He gave an order, interrupting the thoughts of the others, and dragging Ace away, who was struggling. As for what Ace is struggling with, of course, it's because Luffy is still in the Navy camp. He wants to save his younger brother, but he doesn't want his companions to continue fighting in this meat grinder. In response, Joes knocked him unconscious with a fist and let people carry him to the bay port to evacuate. The only ones left on the scene were the Navy, Loya, and Marco, the captains of all the squads under Whitebeard. "Huh, why didn't you leave?" Loya looked at him with interest and asked. "The Navy won't watch you leave, will it?" Pineapple Head Marco rolled the eyes of the dead fish as always, and said slowly, "You hurry up, we will help you stop these guys. After that, you and I are mortal enemies. If I can live." The rest of the people didn't speak, but they must be thinking the same way. Regardless of the purpose, Loya did save Ace, the benefactor of their Whitebeard pirates. But again, he killed Whitebeard, the enemy they must kill. Use the lives of himself and others to kill a way out for Loya, then the kindness will be repaid, and the next thing is just Yuhi Gugwo's revenge. Ha 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 ha, interesting. Repay the kindness first and then take revenge. I really deserve to be the son of Whitebeard. I have learned a lot from him in this spirit. Hearing this sentence, Loya smiled freely. It's okay. Even if I advise you to leave, you won't listen. So, the ice appeared, freezing the huge stab wound on the chest, and the blood flow stopped immediately. Luoya still maintained the huge body after the awakening of the Dragon King. He swung one hand, brought a strong wind, put the dragon-slaying sword on his shoulders, and looked at the uncertain Sengoku. "What do you think, Marshal Sengoku? Of course I killed you." After drinking violently, a red Yuhi figure appeared in front of Loya in the billowing lava package. Akainu is undoubtedly a qualified soldier. He deeply understands that after the death of Whitebeard, the greatest threat to the Navy is Loya. Because he is a soldier, he believes that the current break between the Navy and the world government is only a forced compromise. As long as Loya is killed, everything will return to its original state. So when Sengoku didn't speak, he moved first. Ghost Dog. With a punch, the turbulent magma roared as if it had life, and rushed straight to Loya. But at this time, Marco blocked directly in front of Loya. "Don't think about it." Bang! Mighty Dog is a powerful move that can knock out half of Whitebeard's face with one punch. Marco's strength is not strong enough, so naturally he can't stop it. After the lava iron fist hit him, it burned through his stomach and came out through his body. However, that's enough. The Phoenix Fruit allows him to recover no matter how much damage he takes. There may be an upper limit, but Akainu's lava is not enough. Resisting the pain of his stomach being burned through, the blue flames on Marco's body skyrocketed. Tweet. A crisp bird chirping resounded through the entire naval headquarters, and under the raging flames, Two sturdy and powerful claws tightly pinched the hand that was hitting Akainu. The domineering wrapped around it means that Akainu cannot elementalize his arms at this moment. Great opportunity. Foil, Beasta drew his sword up, and two katana swords swept through the air, outlining a flower petal. Puff. Damn. Suddenly, Akainu jumped back, dodging Diamond Yoja's collision. Covering the fracture of his shoulder, what came out was not blood, but scorching magma. On the spot, the severed hand that lost its owner spasmed a few times, and gradually disappeared. A confrontation. Admiral, Akainu has his arm cut off. If it weren't for his attention, most of his attention was on Loya, guarding against the opponent's attack. Beasta also failed to seize the opportunity and cut off his arm. But even so, the strength of the pirate captains under Whitebeard made the Navy extremely jealous. Some soldiers who were about to rush up saw this, looked left and right, and stopped silently. Even Akainu suffered a big loss. What's the point of them going up? In this world, those who can decide the direction of the war are always those Zeons. In this way, maybe without Drago's shot, my win rate will be 70% or 80%. Seeing this scene in the distance, Qingzi narrowed his eyes slightly. Enough. Sengoku roared loudly, stopping the restless soldiers. Then he looked at Loya and the group of pirates surrounding him, and took a deep breath. You. Let us go. There won't be another meeting, Loya. This sound contains too much information. The most striking point is that Sengoku is really ready to let Loya go. Marshal. Akainu roared unwillingly, but saw Sengoku sweeping the battlefield with tired eyes. Suddenly, Akainu understood. Yes, since even Kizaru was coerced by Loya to rescue Ace, what about the rest? Looking at Fujitora's previous performance, it was obvious that he had some deal with Loya. As for the green pheasant, in addition to being restrained by Loya's Ice Dragon Slayer magic attribute, it is also Loya's mentor, and the relationship between the two is extraordinary. Even if there is a real war, what are they going to do to fight? With his Akainu and Sengoku alone. In such a situation, even if Akainu was unwilling, he could only bite Kiba to hold back. Seeing this, Loya sighed helplessly, and when he raised his hand, the ferocious wound healed at a terrifying speed. Whitebeard had seriously injured him before, and the residual energy was preventing the wound from healing. But as he dies, the power of the shaking fruit is gone, and Loya's pervert recovery ability is revived again. It's boring, I was just about to kill a General Leeway. In the end, you are still as cowardly as always, Marshal Sengoku. Nani. Looking at Loyana's fast-healing wound, the person who was most shocked was Marco. He always thought that Whitebeard had hit Loya hard, which stemmed from his confidence in his father. But he didn't expect that such a terrifying injury could heal so quickly. What was their previous behavior? A grandstanding clown. Thinking of this, Marco's face turned into Yuhi. He didn't know that Loya accepted their help for fishing, but he couldn't accuse the other party of anything. After a pause, he finally had to put down his hands in despair and greet the other captains who were equally stunned. Let's go. Let's go back. But, at this moment, the mutation suddenly occurred. Ah. Tiki, what do you want to do? Chapter 640 Tiki's Secret. The Moby Dick was blown to pieces by the meteor volcano and shelling. At this moment, among the pirate ships that had not left the port, the largest and most stable one was chosen as the spirit ship to transport Whitebeard's bones. Just when the people on this ship were so sad that they couldn't extricate themselves from tears, Blackbeard, Titch, who could be said to be the culprit who caused Whitebeard's death, suddenly emerged from the shadows. One by one, he chopped down these former companions, and came to the corpse where Whitebeard lay down, his eyes full of enthusiasm. PFF'd ha ha ha, Dad, since you are dead, then leave your fruit to me for safekeeping. Hearing this, a pirate who had not yet died raised his head and said unwillingly, Tiki, you have to die. Boom. A bullet shattered his skull, leaving his final curse in his throat. Van Oka pushed the eyes on the bridge of his nose and said with a silent expression, Captain, hurry up. They are here. Oh, understood. After all, Titch looked back. In the distance, Marco and the others saw him appearing, and rushed towards this side in a hurry, but they were far away, and they couldn't make it within a dozen seconds. And what he has to do, it only takes a few seconds. It's a pity, Ice Dragon, Loya is full of confidence, and it is estimated that he can resist. If he can, I really want the Ice Dragon fruit that killed Whitebeard. Titch sighed inwardly, but immediately regained his strength. Even if there is no Ice Dragon fruit, Junjun fruit is not bad. This was originally the goal of his 20-year plan, including the dark fruit. It was a strategy to get the shocking fruit. There is nothing to regret at all. With the ability of double fruit in hand, what can Ice Dragon Loya do to me? Thinking of this, a black cloth appeared in his hand and was about to cover the top of Whitebeard's head. But at this time, Titch felt something was wrong. Not good. Where's Ice Dragon Loya? In that one shot just now, all he saw was the silhouette of Marco and the others running here, and he didn't see Loya at all. Because of the thought that appeared in his head, he subconsciously thought that Loya was still in place. But at this moment, he came back to his senses and suddenly found that Loya had disappeared. And, why is it so cold behind the back? Dark water. Without thinking about it, Tiki activated his fruit ability and grabbed his backhand. Snapped. A fist was fixed in the center of his palm, and the powerful force made Tiki's arm numb, and a trace of blood spilled from the corner of his mouth, but the blue light on the fist trembled a few times, and it quickly disappeared as if it couldn't support it. At the same time, Loya's body was also detached from the awakened state of the Dragon King and turned into a normal person. Seeing this, Titch laughed madly. PFF ha ha ha, Christopher Loya, my dark fruit restrains all devil fruit power, no matter how strong you are. If you lose your fruit power, it's nothing. PFF haha. After a pause, seeing that Loya did not respond, Tiki, who was on guard, finally determined that after Loya lost all his strength, there was no threat to himself, and a strong desire rushed to his brain immediately. Yeah, why take the quake fruit? Don't you think it's a pity? Because I haven't had much contact with it before, I thought it was the most powerful fruit ability in the world. But now there is a murderer who can kill Whitebeard. Isn't his fruit ability even more powerful? If I can get this fruit, the 4 emperors, the navy, and the world government will all bow down at my feet. And it can quickly master an army of undead and conquer the world. At that time, One Piece, wouldn't it be at your fingertips? The more he thought about it, the hotter Titch's heart became, and the more greedy he looked at Loya's eyes. In this regard, Loya's face was not reconciled, but he kept sneering in his heart. Yeah, I can't resist anymore. Quickly open your cards. Anger makes people irrational, greedy. So what? In the original work, even after being severely injured, Whitebeard, who was attacked by Blackbeard's shock attack, could press Titch to the ground in a few moves, which means that his strength is far from Whitebeard's. Now facing the existence of himself who killed Whitebeard with his own hands, if he can't lose his mind, the trump card that Loya wants to see will never appear. After all, you must know that the dark fruit does not have the ability to let people master 2 devil fruits at the same time. How did Tiki break the taboo and take away the fruit ability of Whitebeard? Loya is very curious. Titch, die to me. In the sky, Marco was getting closer and closer, and the hot blue flames fell from the sky, trying to burn it to death. Immediately, Tiki couldn't care less, bit Kiba and covered Loya with a black cloth, and instructed the others, block him. I need time. At this point, Titch apparently gave up the shocking fruit of Whitebeard and set the target on Loya. Boom. There was a rapid explosion outside, and the crew of the Blackbeard pirates fought with the fastest people. Loya stood in the dark, a pair of dragon eyes flashing with an invisible golden light. Even if there was no light, he could see things clearly. Titch grabbed Loya's arm with one hand and released dark water continuously to ensure that he could not use the fruit ability. The other hand stretched forward slightly and placed it on Loya's forehead. PFF ha ha ha, come on, give me your fruit. Dark Drain. Boom! The violent Longway uncontrollably spread out, shaking the black cloth from side to side. Fortunately, the black cloth that Tiki prepared was big enough and tough enough, so that it was not blown away and torn to pieces by the power of this dragon. Loya was full of shock at the moment, not a fake shock. Because this dragon might not be released by him at all. That hand, like a black hole, swallowed everything into it. He could feel that the power in his body was advancing towards his forehead, trying to break out of his body. It seems that Tiki can also see things clearly in the dark. This expression fell in Tiki's eyes, which is the expression of Loya's despair. Without waiting for him to speak, he arrogantly exposed his own foundation. PFF ha ha ha, are you surprised, Loya? If it weren't for the third hand, Tich would definitely take out the rum bottle from his waist and take a sip comfortably. The power of the dark fruit is to swallow everything like darkness. Since it is swallowed, it can be absorbed. I will pull the devil fruit out of your body, so that it cannot be dissipated, and it will directly condense into a solid body. How? This power is not very powerful. As expected, as conceited and reckless as the original. This IQ makes me embarrassed to bully you. Loya complained helplessly in his heart, but he opened his mouth and asked, then what? Would you dare to hand over this kind of power to others? When he grows to my position, Tiki, what do you think he is? Will it kill you? PFF ha ha ha, don't worry, I won't give this to anyone else. Besides myself, who else in this world can be trusted? Tich was as frivolous as Whitebeard gave him, and he didn't notice anything unusual. As if it would take a while, he looked at his left hand and said, since you can control your soul, don't you realize that my body is a little different? Huh,